Elon Musk stepped onto the stage, the lights dimming as the audience erupted into applause. The sound was thunderous, filled with admiration and excitement. As the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, he was used to this kind of attention. His ideas, visionary, ambitious, often bordering on the impossible, had captured the imagination of millions. People loved him. People feared him. But tonight, something felt different. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. This was his keynote address at one of the largest tech conferences in the world. The crowd was packed with the brightest minds in Silicon Valley, eager to hear about the next big leap in technology. Elon was ready to deliver his message about the future, about electric cars, about Mars, about the new frontiers of human achievement. It was his moment to shine once again. But then, something unexpected happened. A small voice pierced through the silence of the auditorium. "Excuse me, Mr. Musk." Elon's head turned instinctively. His eyes scanned the crowd, but what he saw made him pause. There, standing in the aisle, was a tiny boy, no older than 5, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, his messy hair sticking out in all directions. The boy was looking directly at him, eyes wide with curiosity. He had a smile that somehow seemed both innocent and mischievous at the same time. The audience tensed. It wasn't uncommon for people to ask questions at these events, but most were adults, professionals, often business people or researchers. No one had expected a child to interrupt. The crowd chuckled nervously, as if unsure how to react. Was this some kind of joke? A publicity stunt? Elon blinked. "Yes," he called out, raising an eyebrow. "I have a question," the boy said, his voice surprisingly clear and confident for such a young child. "Why do we keep waiting for the future to come, instead of building it ourselves?" The room fell silent. Elon stared at the boy, taken aback. A simple question, yet it felt profound. The audacity of it, the courage, and the way the words hung in the air like an open challenge. The crowd, sensing the awkwardness of the moment, chuckled nervously. Elon, ever the professional, smiled and turned back to the microphone. "Well, that's an excellent question," he said with a slight chuckle. "And it's one that we should all think about more often. But, the future doesn't just happen overnight. It takes hard work, dedication, and, most importantly—" But before he could continue, the boy spoke again. "Mr. Musk," he interrupted, "why are we waiting to go to Mars? It's not hard. We just need the right ideas. I can help you." There it was. The boldness. The confidence of someone who, from all appearances, was far too young to have any business challenging a man like Elon Musk, one of the greatest innovators of the age. A ripple of laughter spread through the room, but Elon felt his stomach tighten. He knew what people were thinking. This was a child, a cute kid asking questions he probably didn't fully understand. But for some reason, Elon felt something stir inside him. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. The boy's eyes remained fixed on him, waiting. "Well, Max," Elon said, using the boy's name as he scanned the crowd and noticed his parents standing nervously nearby. "I have to admit, you've got me thinking." "You're right. The future isn't something we wait for. It's something we build. And maybe it's time we started thinking a little differently about how to get there." Max beamed. Elon could see the child's enthusiasm and natural brilliance in his expression, and it intrigued him. The way the boy spoke with such certainty, it wasn't normal for someone his age. And what really caught Elon off guard was the question itself. In that brief moment, a shift occurred. The crowd had no idea what was going on, but Elon felt like he had just been handed a challenge. It was as though he had been presented with a puzzle, and he couldn't quite figure out the answer yet, but he knew it was something important. The audience, sensing that the moment was growing awkward, began to murmur among themselves. Some were trying to hide their smiles. Others were still uncertain about what had just happened. But Elon was fascinated. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Max, you might be right about that. We should be building the future right now, not waiting for it. So tell me, what's your big idea? What do you think we should do about Mars?" Max stood tall, a little more confident now that he had Elon's attention. "We should build the rockets differently," he said simply. "Not just powerful enough to get us to Mars, but smart enough to make sure we can live there. And we need to use renewable energy, not just for Earth, but for the whole trip. If we're going to live on Mars, we have to use the resources that are already there. Solar, wind, maybe even things we don't know about yet. We have to build a system that works in space, not just here on Earth. Elon was stunned. The simplicity of Max's statement was one thing, but it was the ideas buried beneath the surface that rattled him. It wasn't just a kid talking about space. It was someone who was, in his own way, thinking like a true innovator. The things Max was saying weren't just theoretical. They were practical solutions. And they were unlike anything Elon had ever heard from any scientist, engineer, or entrepreneur. The audience, still unsure whether they should be amused or impressed, waited as Elon sat back in his chair, his mind racing. Could this child really have a point? Was it possible that someone so young could see things that even the greatest minds in the room had missed? The more Elon thought about it, the more intrigued he became. "Well, Max," Elon said slowly, a smile forming on his lips, "I think you might be onto something. Maybe there's a lot more to this than we all realize. Maybe it's time we start thinking like you do, building the future right now." The crowd erupted into applause, unsure whether to be impressed or just entertained by the spectacle of a grown tech mogul being challenged by a 5-year-old. But Elon wasn't focused on the crowd anymore. He was focused on Max, the boy who had just sparked a new kind of fire in his mind. As Max walked back to his parents, his small hand gripping their fingers tightly, Elon watched him go. This kid had something. And Elon Musk, who had built his entire career by defying limits, knew that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the most unexpected places. What would you do if you were in Elon's shoes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you take Max's ideas seriously? Elon Musk spent the following days thinking about Max. It wasn't just the boy's words that lingered in his mind. It was the way Max had spoken with such conviction. Most 5-year-olds were more concerned with toys or cartoons, but Max spoke as if he already had the wisdom of someone much older. Elon had been in countless rooms filled with the most brilliant minds in the world. Scientists, engineers, astronauts, and entrepreneurs all gathered to share ideas, challenge one another, and push the boundaries of what was possible. But there was something about Max. His energy, his clarity, his unshakable belief that the future was something you could build rather than wait for. It was contagious. Elon decided he needed to meet the boy again. He had to understand where Max was coming from. A week later, Elon arranged a private meeting with Max and his parents at SpaceX headquarters. The boy, clad in a simple blue hoodie and sneakers, entered the conference room with the same confidence he'd shown at the conference. His parents, a quiet couple in their mid-30s, followed behind him. "Hi, Max," Elon said, greeting the child warmly as they sat down. "How's everything? Are you excited to be here?" Max smiled, the same bright, almost mischievous smile he had when they first met. "I'm good. I've been thinking about the rockets. I think I can make them better." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Better, huh? Well, I'm all ears. What do you have in mind?" Max leaned forward, his tiny hands clasped together as though he was about to deliver a groundbreaking discovery. "I think rockets don't have to be so wasteful," he said, his voice steady and serious. "Why do we send them up and then let them fall back to Earth? We could make them land on their own, just like how we use a drone. That way, we wouldn't need to build new ones every time." Elon blinked. The child was talking about reusable rockets, the very concept that had revolutionized the aerospace industry. SpaceX was already working on it, but Max's framing of the idea seemed so simple, so elegant. "I see," Elon said, his interest piqued. "But the technology needed for that is pretty complex, Max. The materials, the energy required. It's not as easy as it sounds." Max nodded sagely. "I know, but we can start small. If we can build smaller rockets that land safely first, then we can scale up. That's how it always works. You start with something small and build from there." Elon sat back, thinking about the child's words. He wasn't just parroting back things he'd heard. Max was articulating a fundamental principle of innovation. Start small, learn from failure, and then grow. That was the essence of Silicon Valley, of his own career. But Max was offering this wisdom at 5 years old. not in some boardroom after years of experience. Max, Elon said slowly, you have a way of thinking about things that's different. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's like you see the world not for what it is, but for what it could be. Max grinned, as though he knew exactly what Elon was talking about. That's how my dad says I think. He says I look at problems like puzzles. I don't try to solve them the way other people do. I find a new way, something no one else has thought of. Elon couldn't help but smile. That's exactly it. And I think you're right. We need to start thinking differently. Max's parents, who had been quietly observing the conversation, exchanged a look. They had known for a while that their son was exceptional. From a young age, Max had displayed an uncanny ability to grasp complex concepts. At 3, he had started solving basic algebra problems. By 4, he was teaching himself about renewable energy, reading books that many adults struggled with. His parents had always nurtured his curiosity, but they hadn't realized just how far his mind could stretch. So, Max, Elon said, turning to the boy with a serious expression, what do you think we should do next? What's the biggest thing we should be working on to get to Mars, and to make sure we can live there? Max didn't hesitate. We need to think about how to survive on Mars, not just how to get there. You can't just send people and leave them. They'll need power, water, food. They'll need everything they have on Earth, but on Mars, where everything's different. It's like building a new Earth, but smaller. Elon was stunned again. The simplicity of the idea was so clear, yet so profound. Max wasn't thinking about rockets and engines. He was thinking about life itself. He was thinking about the essentials, the things that would allow humans to thrive in an alien world. And it wasn't just about surviving. Max seemed to understand that it was about thriving. Humans would need to adapt, to build systems that didn't rely on Earth's resources but could make use of what Mars had to offer. That's an incredibly smart way to look at it, Max, Elon said, a spark of excitement in his eyes. But how do we build something like that? What's the first step? Max thought for a moment, his brow furrowing in concentration. I think we need to start with power. Solar power works on Earth, but Mars has less sunlight. We'll need something better, something that works even when the sun isn't shining. Okay, Elon said, leaning in. And how would we do that? How can we harness energy on Mars in a way that doesn't depend on the sun? Max's eyes lit up. We should build wind turbines. Mars has windstorms, right? If we can make turbines that work with the wind, we can generate power even when the sun isn't out. And maybe we could use the dust to generate energy, too. There's a lot of possibilities. Elon sat back, processing the idea. Wind turbines on Mars? It was a bold concept. Most of his engineers and scientists would probably dismiss it at first glance. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that Max was onto something. He was thinking about Mars not just as a place to visit, but as a place to live, a new world to explore, build, and adapt to. For the first time in a long time, Elon felt a sense of wonder, a reminder of why he'd started this journey in the first place. It wasn't just about building rockets or landing on Mars. It was about creating something greater than any one person or company. It was about leaving a legacy that would last for generations. Max, Elon said with a smile, I think we might have a lot to learn from you. Max beamed, his eyes shining with pride. I want to help you build Mars. I think we can make it happen. And with that, something inside Elon shifted. He knew that this meeting was just the beginning. Max wasn't just a 5-year-old genius. He was a partner, someone who saw the world through a different lens, someone who could help Elon and the world take that next big leap. Elon had always prided himself on being a visionary. But now, he realized, maybe it was time to start thinking like a child again, to look at problems through a new lens, to see the impossible and ask, why not? The meeting with Max had left Elon feeling invigorated, but also deeply unsettled. It was as though the young boy had cracked open a door in his mind that Elon hadn't even known existed. The ideas Max shared weren't just innovative. They were radical, fresh, and unburdened by the constraints that often plagued the thinking of adults. But Max wasn't just spitting out random thoughts. His concepts made sense. They were grounded in real-world physics and engineering challenges. Elon found himself spending the next few days brainstorming ideas with his top engineers, integrating Max's input into ongoing projects. They began reevaluating everything: spaceship designs, power sources, the logistics of setting up a human colony on Mars. Max's focus on sustainability, resourcefulness, and adaptability sparked new discussions that hadn't even occurred to most of the team. The energy around SpaceX felt different, more urgent. It was as if a new vision had entered the company, one that went beyond getting to Mars. It was about how humanity would survive and flourish once they got there. As the days turned into weeks, Elon's curiosity about Max grew. There was something about the boy's intelligence, combined with his unwavering optimism and the ease with which he communicated complex ideas, that captivated him. Elon needed to understand where this brilliance came from, how Max had developed such an advanced understanding of science and technology at such a young age. The boy's parents, Sarah and Jack, had been supportive of his talents from the start, but they were also protective, careful not to let Max's precociousness consume him. Sarah had explained to Elon that they'd always encouraged Max to explore his interests, but they'd never pushed him too hard. He had simply absorbed information like a sponge, often surpassing his parents in terms of knowledge on certain topics by the time he was 4. They never saw it as something special, just Max being Max. But now, seeing how Max's ideas were influencing the trajectory of SpaceX, Elon was more convinced than ever that the boy's potential was limitless. Elon arranged another meeting with the family. He wanted to dive deeper, to understand the origins of Max's genius and whether there was more to the story than just a sharp mind. A few days later, they met in a private conference room at SpaceX. Max sat across from Elon, the same focused, thoughtful look on his face. This time, however, he was wearing a SpaceX cap that Elon had given him during their last meeting, a small gesture that seemed to make the boy even more at ease. His parents sat next to him, their eyes fixed on Elon, as though waiting for him to say something. "I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation, Max," Elon began. "You've got some incredibly forward-thinking ideas. But I'm curious, how did you get so good at understanding all of this? At such a young age, you're already talking about things that take most engineers a lifetime to figure out." Max shifted in his seat and smiled. "I like to learn. My dad says I'm a problem solver. I just like figuring out how things work. And when something doesn't work, I try to make it work a different way." Elon leaned forward, intrigued. "And how do you learn? I mean, what kinds of things do you read or study?" Max thought for a moment, as though the question had never been asked in such a direct way. "I read a lot of books. I watch videos. And sometimes, I just think about things. I like to see how things are built. If I understand how something works, then I can see how to make it better. Or sometimes, I try to figure out how it would work if it was on a different planet." Elon smiled, recalling his own childhood. He had been fascinated by rockets and space from a young age as well. But Max had something different, an innate ability to visualize solutions where others only saw obstacles. "That's incredible," Elon said. "But there's something else I need to know. What do you think about the future? You've talked about building Mars. But what about Earth? Do you think the same principles, thinking differently, solving problems in unconventional ways, could help solve problems here?" Max's eyes lit up. "Earth's got a lot of problems too, but I think we can fix them. We've got to stop using up all the things we have, like oil and coal. We have to use things that won't run out, like the wind, the sun, and even the sea. And we need to make sure the planet stays clean. If we don't, then even if we get to Mars, we won't have anywhere to come back to." Elon felt a deep sense of pride swell within him. Max had just encapsulated, in a few short sentences, the core of everything Elon had been working toward with Tesla and SpaceX: the desire to make humanity a multiplanetary species, sure, but also to ensure that Earth would remain habitable, healthy, and sustainable for future generations. Max had already connected the dots between the two, something that many adults, even those in positions of power, had failed to do. "Max," Elon said with a smile, "you really are one of a kind. You're thinking about things on a level that's beyond anything I could have imagined at your age, or maybe even now. I think you're going to change the world." Max beamed, clearly pleased by Elon's words. "I just want to help. That's all. I want to build things that make life better." Sarah and Jack exchanged a look. It was clear that Max's conversation with Elon had been profound, even if they weren't entirely sure of the implications. They were used to their son's extraordinary intelligence, but hearing someone like Elon Musk, who had done so much to reshape the future, speak so highly of their son was a different experience entirely. Max, Elon continued, I want to work with you. I think together, we could accomplish something amazing. You've already given me some incredible ideas for Mars, but I think you have even more to offer. What if we worked on a project together? Maybe a new space mission, or a way to use sustainable energy that no one's ever thought of before. What do you say? Max's eyes widened, and he looked up at his parents. Sarah and Jack were taken aback, unsure of how to respond to such a big offer. But Max didn't hesitate for long. Yes, I'd love to help, Max exclaimed, his enthusiasm contagious. Let's build something that works for everyone. Elon smiled. He had been in the business of building the future for years. But now, sitting across from a 5-year-old boy who saw possibilities where others saw limitations, he realized that this partnership might just be the most important thing he'd ever done. The collaboration between Elon Musk and Max became the talk of Silicon Valley. People were curious, skeptical, and intrigued by the idea of a 5-year-old working alongside one of the world's most influential innovators. Many dismissed it as a publicity stunt. After all, how could a child contribute to something as complex as Mars colonization or sustainable energy? But Elon wasn't just any CEO. He was a visionary, someone who had built a career on challenging the status quo and pushing the limits of possibility. For Elon, Max's presence was a breath of fresh air, a reminder that true innovation often comes from unexpected places. Max didn't know the limitations that adults carried with them. He didn't see the barriers that engineers and scientists saw when they looked at a problem. Instead, he saw potential. He saw solutions that were bold, new, and untried. And that, in Elon's mind, was what made him special. A few days after their meeting, Elon had arranged for Max to visit SpaceX headquarters again. This time, however, it wasn't just to talk ideas. Elon had something specific in mind, a project that he believed could become a game-changer for both Earth and Mars. Max, Elon began as they sat down in one of the conference rooms, I've been thinking about your ideas, especially about energy. You're right. We need to think about power differently. But what if we could make energy completely renewable, something that works on Mars and Earth, no matter the conditions? I want to work on a new energy model with you. Something like universal energy. Max's eyes sparkled with excitement. He had been fascinated by energy generation since he was 3 years old, often building makeshift solar panels with his parents in their backyard. But Elon's idea was something new entirely. Universal energy? Max repeated, his brow furrowing slightly as he considered the concept. Yes, Elon said, something that can harness natural resources, adapt to the environment, and never run out. We need to develop a system that works both on Earth and Mars, something that doesn't rely on one specific form of energy. It has to be dynamic, flexible, something that can evolve with the planet's needs. Max leaned forward, tapping his fingers against the table. He was quiet for a moment, thinking deeply. So, we need something that can work when the sun isn't out, and that can work on Mars too, where it's cold and the weather's different. Elon nodded. Exactly. Solar and wind power are good, but they're not perfect. We need a hybrid system that can harness multiple sources of energy, something that adapts to its surroundings. Imagine if we could use everything around us: wind, sun, geothermal, even the atmosphere. A system that can switch between energy sources depending on what's available. Max's eyes lit up. We could make it like a brain. A smart system that figures out the best way to get energy depending on where it is. If it's windy, it uses wind. If it's sunny, it uses solar. If there's nothing, it can store energy in batteries or something. Exactly, Elon said, impressed by Max's insight. And we could build it into the infrastructure we create on Mars. The same system could be used on Earth, focusing on sustainability, reducing our carbon footprint, and giving us more control over the energy we produce. Max sat back, his mind clearly working overtime. So, we could make energy everywhere, from the air, from the ground, from the wind, from the sun, and we could use it to help people on Earth, and to live on Mars. All without using up things that run out. Exactly, Elon said, smiling. And that's where you come in. You've got the kind of creativity and thinking that we need. Together, I think we could create something truly revolutionary. The rest of the meeting was a whirlwind of ideas. Elon and Max talked about creating new energy storage systems that could handle the volatile conditions on Mars. They brainstormed ways to use Mars's natural resources, like ice and minerals, to create a self-sustaining system that could power the first human colonies. They even talked about using AI to predict energy consumption and distribution, allowing the system to adapt autonomously. But as they talked, one thing became clear. They were no longer just building a project. They were creating a vision for a future where energy wasn't a finite resource, but something that could be harnessed from the world around them, something that could work in any environment, on any planet, at any time. As the day drew to a close, Elon watched Max interact with the engineers. Despite his age, the boy commanded respect. His ideas were bold, but they were also practical. The way he spoke about energy systems, about Mars, about Earth, it wasn't like listening to a child. It was like listening to a peer. Max had a unique ability to bridge the gap between childlike wonder and adult innovation. Elon couldn't help but think about the future. How many adults in the room, even with their years of experience, had failed to come up with ideas as fresh and groundbreaking as Max's? How many had been trapped by conventional thinking, unable to see the bigger picture? Max's approach was different. He wasn't limited by the knowledge of the past. He was thinking about what could be, what was possible, not what was already known. As Max's parents gathered their things to leave, Elon pulled Sarah aside. I just wanted to say, Max is incredible. I'm not just saying that because he's a child. His ideas are transformative. I've never seen anything like it. Sarah smiled, but there was a look of concern in her eyes. Thank you, Elon. We know Max is different, but we're just trying to give him the space to be himself. We don't want him to feel like he has to save the world. Elon nodded thoughtfully. I get that, but the truth is, Max is going to change the world, and we should be helping him do that. I know this might seem like a lot for him, but his ideas are already influencing what we do here at SpaceX, and I believe they can influence the entire world. Sarah looked at her son, who was now chatting with one of the engineers, completely at ease in a room full of adults. She had always known Max was special, but hearing Elon say it out loud made it feel real, tangible. We just want him to be happy, she said softly. I understand, Elon said, and I think he'll be happiest if he's doing what he loves. I think he has a future here with us. Max turned to see his parents standing by the door, and his face lit up when he saw them. Are we going home now? Sarah smiled. Not yet, Max. We're still talking to Elon. We'll be leaving soon. Okay, Max said with excitement. But when I get home, I want to build a rocket. Elon chuckled, watching the boy as he bounced out of the room. He knew that Max's dream of building rockets wasn't just a childhood fantasy. It was a dream that was already taking shape. For Elon, the partnership with Max was beginning to feel less like a project and more like a movement. A movement that could change not just the future of space exploration, but the future of humanity itself. If you had Max's imagination, what would you create? Do you think it's possible for a young child to revolutionize space exploration? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was unfolding. Max was more than just a prodigy. He was the embodiment of a future that Elon had dreamed about for years. Their partnership was beginning to look less like an experiment and more like the beginning of a new era. But with great ambition came even greater responsibility. Elon knew that working with a 5-year-old, no matter how gifted, would come with its own set of challenges. Elon spent the next few weeks deep in thought, planning for the future. He continued to push forward with SpaceX's Mars ambitions, but now, Max's vision had to be incorporated into everything, every project, every calculation, every future mission. But how would they make this partnership work on such a grand scale? Elon had worked with the brightest minds in the world, but Max was still so young. Could he handle the pressure? Could anyone expect such a young child to not just dream big, but to carry the weight of changing the world? It was another early morning at SpaceX headquarters. and Elon was in a meeting with his senior engineers. The room buzzed with activity as the team discussed the latest plans for the Mars mission, how they would transport supplies, how they would build sustainable habitats, how to deal with the harsh Martian conditions. The challenge was massive, but the team was determined. But then, as the conversation turned to energy sources, Elon brought up Max's ideas again. The room fell silent. Elon had already told them about Max's thoughts on renewable energy, but now he wanted to make it official. He knew that, if they were going to build the future that Max envisioned, they needed to start implementing his ideas immediately. "I think we should start integrating Max's concepts," Elon said, his voice calm but firm. "It's more than just a solar-powered solution. It's a system that could be revolutionary for both Earth and Mars. We'll need to focus on adaptability and sustainability in everything we do." One of the senior engineers, Lisa, raised an eyebrow. "But Elon, with all due respect, Max is only 5 years old. Are we really going to let a child dictate how we design systems that are meant to operate on Mars?" Elon paused, choosing his words carefully. "Max sees things that we can't. He doesn't have the constraints of years of experience. He sees what's possible, not what's been done before. We've all been trying to solve these problems in the same way, but maybe we need to think differently." There was a long silence before another engineer, Mark, spoke up. "I've been thinking about what Max said, and honestly, some of it makes a lot of sense. The adaptability factor he's talking about, how a system could switch between different energy sources depending on conditions, could help reduce the need for constant fuel shipments. We could save time, money, and resources by integrating that into our designs. Maybe we should at least explore it." Elon's eyes lit up. "Exactly. We're not throwing out everything we've worked on, but we should be exploring new options, especially those that make us less reliant on traditional energy sources. This is the kind of thinking we need, the kind that Max brings to the table." The room remained quiet for a moment, and then, reluctantly, the engineers nodded. They trusted Elon, and if he believed Max's ideas could change things, they would follow his lead. Later that week, Elon arranged a meeting with Max to discuss how to make their vision a reality. The young boy was sitting in the same conference room as before, his small feet dangling off the chair, his eyes bright with excitement as Elon entered. He was already sketching ideas for a new type of solar panel, one that could double as a wind turbine when necessary. "Max, I've been talking to the engineers," Elon said as he sat down across from him. "We're ready to start working on your ideas. We want to build something that's smart, flexible, and sustainable, something that can work on Earth and on Mars." Max didn't even look up from his drawing. "I know how to make it work," he said matter-of-factly, his pencil moving quickly as he drew designs. "It has to be able to change. If the sun's out, it uses solar power. If there's no sun, it uses wind power. And if there's no wind, it can pull energy from the ground or from the atmosphere. You can make it like a big brain that figures out what's best. It's like a puzzle. Every part has to fit together." Elon watched, mesmerized by the boy's focus. "You're absolutely right. And the best part is that we could build this kind of system on Mars, too. The planet's conditions are harsh, and we need something that adapts to those conditions. So, we're going to need your help to design it." Max finally looked up, his face lighting up. "I can do that. I know what to do." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of brainstorming sessions, design meetings, and rapid prototyping. Max's presence at SpaceX was unconventional, to say the least, but his contributions were impossible to ignore. While the engineers worked on the technical details, Max became the project's heart, his imagination and vision fueling every decision. He would draw designs in the morning, and by afternoon, the engineers would be discussing how to make them work. There were no boundaries in Max's world, no traditional limits to what was possible. His way of thinking was a breath of fresh air in a room full of adults who had spent years working within the constraints of established knowledge. And the more they worked, the more they realized how right Max was. His idea of a dynamic, adaptable energy system wasn't just a theoretical concept, it could work. Solar, wind, geothermal, and atmospheric power could all be harnessed and stored in innovative ways. The key was to design a system that could constantly adjust, storing energy in battery banks when there was an abundance and redistributing it when needed. As the project began to take shape, the engineers were forced to rethink their approach. What once seemed like a far-off dream, creating an energy system that was both versatile and self-sustaining, was now within their grasp. Elon was more confident than ever that Max's ideas would be the catalyst that changed everything. They were designing the future, not just for Mars, but for Earth too. But as the excitement grew, so did the pressure. The world was watching. News outlets were beginning to cover Elon's partnership with Max, and the skepticism from the outside world was growing louder. People wanted results. They wanted proof that Max, at just 5 years old, was more than just a prodigy with a lot of ideas. They wanted to see if he could really help deliver the future Elon was promising. Could a child really contribute to something as monumental as a mission to Mars? Elon could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on him. But when he looked at Max, drawing on the floor of the SpaceX office, he knew that there was no turning back. They had something special, something that could change the world. As Elon Musk stood at the front of the conference room, he felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just another meeting to discuss the progress of their Mars mission or the latest energy system prototype. No, this was something bigger. This was the moment where Max's ideas, his vision of an energy revolution, would either fail or succeed in the real world. Elon had always thrived under pressure. He was used to taking risks and forging ahead with bold, untested ideas. But this time, the stakes felt different. It wasn't just about SpaceX's future. It was about a 5-year-old boy with a brilliant mind who had given the world a glimpse into what might be possible. If Max's ideas worked, they would forever change how humanity looked at energy, not just for Mars, but for Earth as well. It had been 2 months since Max had first sat down with Elon, sketching out his vision for a dynamic, multi-source energy system. The engineers had worked tirelessly to build prototypes based on Max's drawings. They had made adjustments, experimented with new materials, and pushed the boundaries of what they thought was possible. And now, after all the work, they were ready for the ultimate test, a live demonstration of Max's energy system. Elon stood next to Max, watching as the engineers set up the prototype. The room was filled with the usual mix of excitement and anxiety that preceded a major test, but for Max, it was all just another part of the process. He had been here before, seeing something in his mind and then watching it come to life. This time, however, there was something different. The energy system they were testing would need to harness solar, wind, and geothermal power, while being adaptable enough to store energy when the conditions changed. The goal was to create a system that could be used not just on Earth, but also on Mars, where the sun was weak and the wind unpredictable. Max, standing with his arms crossed, looked up at Elon with an expression that was equal parts calm and determined. "It's going to work," he said with a quiet confidence that startled even Elon. There was no doubt in his voice, no hesitance, just a firm belief that his vision was about to become a reality. Elon glanced at the team of engineers. They were focused, but he could see the tension in their faces. They knew the importance of this test. The world was watching, and they couldn't afford failure. But if anyone could pull it off, it was Max. He had already proved that his ideas were more than just childlike fantasies. They were the foundation of something revolutionary. As the test began, Max's system was activated. Solar panels unfolded from the base of the unit, while wind turbines began spinning as the system adjusted to the breeze coming in through the open windows. A low hum filled the room as the geothermal units engaged, drawing energy from the ground. The entire setup seemed to come alive, a symphony of technology working together seamlessly. The engineers monitored the data closely, their screens displaying graphs that tracked energy flow, storage capacity, and power output. Max stood by, his arms folded, his eyes scanning the results with a knowing gaze. Elon watched Max's face intently, trying to read his thoughts. For someone so young, Max had an uncanny ability to sense when things weren't right. He could see it in the way the boy's eyes darted between the displays, as if he were in tune with every fluctuation in the system. Then it happened. One of the wind turbines started to slow down, its rotation stalling. The engineers scrambled to adjust settings, but before they could react, Max was already at the control panel, his small hands flying over the buttons with surprising speed. "Hold on," Max said, pressing a button that immediately redirected power from the solar panels into the wind turbine's motor. The turbine began to spin again, faster this time, its energy output stabilizing. Elon couldn't believe his eyes. Max had anticipated the problem before anyone else even knew it existed. It was a moment of pure genius. The engineers looked at each other, wide-eyed. Max had just saved the system from a potential shutdown, and in doing so, proved that his design was more than just theoretical. It was real. As the test continued, the system continued to adapt to changing conditions, shifting between energy sources seamlessly. The engineers kept their eyes glued to their monitors, marveling at the precision with which the system operated. They had designed it to be flexible, but watching Max's ideas in action was a different experience altogether. It was as if the system had a mind of its own, a mind that had been shaped by Max's vision. By the end of the test, the results were undeniable. The system had worked flawlessly, adjusting to solar, wind, and geothermal energy sources with perfect efficiency. It was a breakthrough that no one had thought possible just a few months ago. And the best part? It was only the beginning. Later that afternoon, as the engineers debriefed and Elon reviewed the data, Max and his parents stood outside the conference room. Elon walked over to them, a smile on his face. "Max, I have to say, I'm amazed. Your energy system is everything we hoped it would be. In fact, it's more than that. It's a game changer." Max grinned, looking up at Elon. "I told you it would work." Elon chuckled. "Yes, you did. You were right. You've just proven that the future of energy doesn't have to be limited by what we already know. It can be dynamic, flexible, and self-sustaining. And we owe it all to you." Max beamed, clearly pleased but still modest. "I just thought about what makes sense. If we use everything around us, we don't have to run out of power." Elon nodded. "Exactly. And now, with your design, we can bring this vision to life, not just here on Earth, but on Mars too." As Elon turned to leave, Sarah, Max's mother, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Elon, I just want to say thank you for believing in Max. You've given him the space to create something truly amazing. And I know it's not always easy working with a 5-year-old. Elon smiled, turning back to her. "Believe me, it's been an honor. Max is one of the brightest minds I've ever worked with. And I don't say that lightly." As Max and his parents left the building, Elon watched them walk away, the boy skipping ahead, lost in his thoughts of rockets and renewable energy. Elon felt a sense of calm settle over him. The road to Mars was still long, and there were many obstacles ahead. But with Max's ideas taking shape, it felt as though the future had just taken a giant leap forward. The demonstration had sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Max's innovative energy system was being hailed as the future of both Earth's and Mars's energy solutions. The media, once skeptical about a 5-year-old leading a technological revolution, was now fascinated by him. News outlets, scientific journals, and even government agencies began scrambling to get a closer look at his designs. It was a moment of unprecedented attention, not just for Elon Musk and SpaceX, but for the young genius who had made it all possible. Max had gone from being a child prodigy to an international phenomenon. Interviews, documentaries, and even live televised events followed one after another. The little boy with the big ideas had captivated the world, and now everyone wanted to know what he would do next. Elon, for his part, was busy handling the public relations frenzy. He found himself fielding calls from government officials, major corporations, and even world leaders, all eager to discuss how they could integrate Max's energy technology into their own initiatives. SpaceX had never been under such intense scrutiny. While Elon had always been accustomed to the pressure that came with his vision for Mars, this was different. The eyes of the world weren't just on SpaceX's rockets anymore. They were on Max. Inside SpaceX's headquarters, things were also moving at lightning speed. The team was already beginning to work on the next phase of development for Max's energy system. They were pushing the limits of what was possible, integrating new materials, better batteries, and more advanced computing systems into the design. The goal was clear: to create a fully functional prototype that could be used not only in space exploration, but also to address energy crises here on Earth. It was a monumental task, but Elon believed it could be done. Max had shown them that the impossible wasn't just a possibility. It was something they could build, together. However, with the growing media attention came challenges. Elon knew that with success came a target on their backs. Other companies, from established energy giants to startups, began to take an interest in Max's ideas. Some were interested in collaboration. Others were less interested in sharing the spotlight. But for now, Elon's priority remained Max's vision. They had something the world needed, and that was what mattered most. As the weeks went on, Max continued to work alongside Elon and the engineers. Despite his newfound fame, the young genius remained humble and focused. He would often disappear into his corner of the lab, sketching designs and calculating equations that no one else could quite understand. It was a routine that had become second nature to him. While the world saw a child who was gifted beyond comprehension, to Max, it was just another day of solving problems. But not everyone was happy with the rapid progress. A growing faction of critics began to question the ethical implications of allowing such a young child to lead a technological revolution. At a press conference one afternoon, Elon was faced with a question he knew was coming but dreaded all the same. Elon, do you think it's responsible to allow a 5-year-old to make decisions that will affect the future of humanity? This isn't just about rockets or energy systems. This is about the planet, space exploration, and the survival of the human race. Is it wise to put such power in the hands of someone so young? The question hit harder than Elon had expected. He paused, allowing the weight of the moment to sink in. He glanced toward Max, who was sitting quietly beside him, drawing on his notepad, oblivious to the gravity of the question. Elon, how do you justify this? How do you convince the world that a child, no matter how brilliant, can take on such responsibility? Elon took a deep breath. Max is a unique individual. He doesn't think like anyone else. His ability to think beyond traditional constraints has already produced results that many thought were impossible. And while he may be young, his ideas are no less valid because of it. This isn't just about his age. It's about his ability to see solutions in a way that none of us can. It's that kind of thinking that we need to solve the most difficult problems we face, whether on Earth or Mars. He turned to Max, who looked up with a smile. Max, how do you feel about all of this attention? The world is watching you now. Max looked directly into the cameras, his small voice steady. I just want to help. I think we can fix a lot of things if we work together. I don't think about age. I think about ideas. I think about how we can make the world a better place. The crowd fell silent. For a moment, there was only the sound of Max's innocent yet profoundly wise words hanging in the air. Elon turned back to the audience. What Max said is true. It's not about age. It's about ideas. And sometimes, it takes a child to show us a path that we couldn't see before. Later that day, Elon and Max sat alone in a quiet corner of SpaceX's offices. The media storm had died down, but the weight of the discussion still lingered. Elon, do you think they're right? Max asked, his voice filled with a rare uncertainty. Am I really too young to do all of this? Elon shook his head. Max, you are exactly the right person for this. You see things differently, and that's what we need. Don't let anyone tell you that you're too young. The world needs people like you. People who can look at a problem and see an answer no one else can. You're not just a kid with ideas. You're a visionary. And together, we're going to change the world. Max smiled and nodded, clearly comforted by Elon's words. But he still had a burning question. But what happens if I fail? Elon leaned forward, locking eyes with the boy. Max, the only true failure is when you stop trying. You've already shown us what's possible. There will be challenges along the way. But as long as you keep believing in yourself, we'll face them together. There's nothing you can't do if you keep pushing forward. Max's eyes sparkled with renewed determination. Okay, let's do it. As the days turned into weeks, Max's energy system continued to evolve. SpaceX engineers worked tirelessly to improve upon the prototype with Max's guidance. What had started as a simple idea was now rapidly becoming a fully functional model, a system that could provide clean, sustainable energy not just for space exploration, but for the entire planet. But as their work continued, so did the increasing pressure from both the public and corporate entities eager to capitalize on Max's brilliance. Competition was heating up, and soon, other tech companies started releasing their own versions of energy solutions based on Max's concepts, though no one could replicate his unique ability to bring it all together. Elon knew that the real battle wasn't just about who could build the best energy system. It was about who would lead the charge toward the future. And with Max by his side, Elon Musk was more determined than ever to ensure that the future of humanity would be defined by the power of innovation, collaboration, and limitless possibilities. What do you think? Is Max's energy system the key to our future? How do you see young minds shaping the world of tomorrow? Share your thoughts below. As Max's innovative energy system took shape and the world's attention continued to grow, something unexpected began to happen. The pressure on Elon and Max intensified, not just from the media, but from a growing faction of powerful industries. The energy sector, already massive and entrenched in its ways, was starting to take notice, and not all of them were pleased with the new kid on the block. It started quietly. At first, it was subtle. Small industry reports questioning the viability of Max's designs, anonymous critiques in scientific journals, and quiet whispers in closed-door meetings among the world's most powerful energy CEOs. But as Max's system began to prove itself in real-world tests, the whispers grew louder. The conventional energy world didn't just see Max's ideas as a new product. They saw it as a threat to their entire business model. And so, the battle began. One day, Elon was walking through the SpaceX headquarters when he noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The usual hum of activity had turned into an undercurrent of tension. The engineers were working harder than ever to refine Max's energy system, but there was something more palpable in the air now, a sense of urgency. The competitive landscape had changed, and it was becoming clear that SpaceX wasn't the only entity trying to secure a piece of the future. Elon walked into the conference room where Max was sitting with a few of the lead engineers, staring at a digital model of the new energy system. Max looked up as Elon entered, a curious expression on his face. "Elon, look," Max said, pointing to the model. "If we reconfigure the energy storage system, we can increase efficiency by 7% just by switching to a different material for the supercapacitors." Elon's mind was already racing. As the world's focus was on Max, his work had begun to touch more than just the energy sector. Other industries, automotive, tech, and even space exploration, were beginning to realize the potential of this young mind. They were seeing his ideas not just as breakthroughs, but as a way to accelerate their own progress. But with the growing excitement came resistance, and that resistance was about to make itself known. It was late in the evening when Elon received a call he knew was coming, though he hadn't expected it so soon. The caller ID flashed with a name that had become both synonymous with power and controversy. Reed Kingston, CEO of Atlas Energy, one of the largest traditional energy companies in the world. "Elon," Reed's voice came through the line, calm but with an edge of authority. "I think we need to have a serious conversation." Elon leaned back in his chair, glancing over at the quiet corner of the office where Max had been working just moments ago. "Go ahead, Reed." "Max's energy system, it's impressive. There's no denying that," Reed said, his tone smooth. "But you know as well as I do, the implications for the global energy market are enormous. We're talking about billions of dollars in infrastructure, livelihoods, and energy contracts. Max's design is going to disrupt all of that." "I'm aware," Elon said. "That's the point. We need new ways of thinking if we're going to solve the world's energy crisis. Max is providing that." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Reed spoke, his voice more serious. "I agree, Elon. But what happens when this system goes mainstream? What's going to stop a flood of smaller companies from using Max's design, making it so widely available that it devalues the entire energy market? What happens when the prices of energy, as we know them, collapse?" Elon's eyes narrowed. "That's the way progress works, Reed. Change is difficult for those invested in the status quo, but it's necessary." Reed chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You're right, Elon. Change is necessary. But the world isn't ready for that kind of change. And neither are the people who've built their empires around the current energy model. You think you can change the world with Max? That's cute. But there's a reason the energy giants don't move fast. They don't have to. They own the future. And they'll do everything they can to keep it that way. Is this a warning?" Elon asked, his voice tight. "It's a reality check. Don't underestimate the lengths some of these companies will go to in order to protect their interests. Your partnership with Max is going to stir up a hornet's nest. I suggest you think carefully about what's next. Before Elon could respond, Reed hung up. The room felt colder, quieter. Elon didn't need Reed to tell him what he already knew. The old guard wouldn't go down without a fight. The next day, as the team worked late into the evening, Elon sat with Max in a quiet corner of the office. He was trying to process everything. Reed's warning, the mounting pressure from all sides, and the uncertainty that loomed over their path forward. Max, as always, was absorbed in his work. He was drawing a new iteration of the energy system, refining its power output and storage capabilities. To him, it was just another puzzle to solve. But Elon couldn't shake the feeling that the puzzle was becoming more dangerous by the minute. Elon, Max said, looking up from his work, do you think we can make the world better? I mean really better. Not just a little bit. A lot. Elon hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to answer. But then he looked at Max, the child who had already shown him a path forward that most adults couldn't even imagine, and realized something. We already are, Max. We already are. Max smiled, then turned back to his work. But Elon's mind was elsewhere. The world was watching, but the real challenge wasn't just proving the power of Max's ideas. It was protecting them from those who would stop at nothing to maintain control over the future. As the days passed, it became clear. Max and Elon were about to face a new kind of battle, one that wasn't just about technology or space. It was a battle for the future itself. The phone call with Reed Kingston had rattled Elon more than he cared to admit. He'd always known that pushing the boundaries of technology would draw resistance, but the veiled threats had made it all the more real. Max had already shown the world a new way of thinking, but there were powerful forces at play now, forces that would do anything to protect their monopoly over global energy. And those forces were beginning to make their presence felt. It was late one evening when Elon and Max were sitting in the quiet of SpaceX's research wing, working on the final adjustments to the next iteration of the energy system. The hum of the fluorescent lights and the rhythmic tapping of Max's pencil on his notepad was the only sound filling the space. Max had grown used to this late-night routine, working through ideas, refining concepts, and pushing the limits of what was possible. Elon, on the other hand, was far from focused. His thoughts kept drifting back to Reed's ominous words. The world isn't ready for this kind of change. Elon had heard similar warnings throughout his career, but this one felt different. The stakes weren't just about technology or innovation anymore. They were about something much bigger. His phone buzzed, pulling him out of his reverie. It was a message from one of his top engineers, David. Elon, we've got a problem. It's about the new prototype. There's been an anomaly in the testing data. It looks like someone has intentionally tampered with the system. Elon's pulse quickened. Tampered with the system? He quickly typed a response. What do you mean, tampered? The response came back almost immediately. We're not sure yet, but there's been some irregularities in the energy output. The system's been shutting down intermittently. Could be sabotage. Sabotage. Elon stood up, the room feeling suddenly claustrophobic. He turned to Max, who was still scribbling away, oblivious to the tension in the air. Max, I need you to stay here for a moment. I have to go check something out, Elon said, his voice firm but calm. Max looked up from his drawings, his brow furrowed. What's wrong, Elon? There's been a glitch in the system. I'll be right back, okay? Max nodded, his youthful face serious. Be careful. Elon didn't respond. He turned and walked briskly toward the lab, his mind racing. He had no idea who would want to sabotage something as revolutionary as Max's system, but it was becoming clear that someone had something to lose. When Elon reached the lab, he found David and the rest of the engineering team huddled around the control panels, their faces tense and filled with concern. The large screens on the wall showed the energy data, but the numbers were all over the place. Erratic spikes, drops, and sudden disruptions in the energy flow. This doesn't make sense, David said as he looked over the data. This isn't a malfunction. Someone's deliberately trying to disable the system. Who would do this? Elon asked, his voice sharp. David glanced at the others before answering. We've traced the issue to the external security system. It looks like someone hacked into our servers and altered the parameters of the system remotely. The alterations are subtle, but they're enough to cause the system to fail intermittently. Elon's stomach sank. This was no longer just a technical issue. It was an attack. Do we know who did this? Elon asked. We're still tracing the signal, but it's coming from an outside source. It's not local. Elon's mind immediately went to the energy giants, the ones who had the most to lose if Max's energy system went global. But he couldn't jump to conclusions without proof. We'll need to beef up security and start an investigation immediately, Elon said, his tone resolute. We can't let this slow us down. David nodded. We'll do everything we can to track it down. Elon stood there for a moment, staring at the flickering data on the screen. Someone was trying to stop them. But who? As the investigation into the tampering continued, Elon and his team worked overtime to identify the source of the attack. It wasn't long before they discovered the hacking attempt had originated from a highly encrypted, anonymous server located in a foreign country, one that had no direct ties to SpaceX or any of its partners. It was clear that whoever was behind this had gone to great lengths to cover their tracks. But there was one detail that gave Elon pause. The hacker had targeted not just the energy system's operational data, but also its design blueprints. The implications of this were enormous. If someone could steal Max's designs, they could replicate the technology, reverse engineer it, and potentially undermine the entire project. Elon knew they had to act fast. He needed to get to the bottom of this before the attackers could gain any more ground. But the real question was, who would go this far to stop them? Meanwhile, Max had begun to sense the growing tension. Though he didn't fully understand the technicalities of the sabotage, he could feel that something wasn't quite right. That evening, as Elon sat in his office, trying to make sense of the latest data and oversee the investigation, Max came to him with a question. Elon, are we in danger? Max asked quietly. Elon's heart sank. The boy's perceptiveness never ceased to amaze him. No, Max, Elon said gently. We're not in danger. But someone doesn't like what we're doing, and they're trying to stop us. But I promise you, we're going to fix this. Max looked up at him, his face serious. I don't like it when people hurt others' ideas. My idea is meant to help everyone, not hurt anyone. I'll help you stop them. Elon smiled, though it was a strained expression. He put a hand on Max's shoulder. You've already done more than enough, Max. But I'll keep you updated, okay? Max nodded solemnly. Okay. Elon sat back in his chair, his thoughts heavy. There was no turning back now. Whoever was behind this had made it clear they would stop at nothing to protect their interests. But Elon Musk didn't shy away from a challenge, especially not when it involved Max's groundbreaking ideas. The battle for the future had just become a lot more personal. The night after the sabotage was a restless one for Elon. Despite the efforts of his engineers to patch up the system and restore its functionality, a gnawing sense of unease lingered. The attack had been too calculated, too deliberate. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to delay progress. They were trying to stop it entirely. As the morning sun rose over SpaceX headquarters, Elon walked through the quiet halls, his mind racing. He had always known that innovation came with its share of enemies, but this felt different. This wasn't just a fight for market share. It was a battle for control over the future itself. He entered his office, where Max was already waiting for him. The young genius was perched on a chair by the window, staring out at the sprawling SpaceX campus, his small hands clasped together thoughtfully. He looked every bit the part of a prodigy, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that belied his age. Elon, what happened? Max asked without looking up, his voice calm but insistent. Elon took a seat across from him, exhaling slowly. Someone tried to sabotage the system, he said, his voice low. They hacked into the energy prototype and tampered with the data. It's deliberate, and it's not just a random act of vandalism. It's a message. Max's eyes widened, his young face serious. But why? What do they want? Elon hesitated. The answer was difficult, and it was something he hadn't fully articulated to anyone, not even his closest team members. They want to stop us. Max, whoever did this, doesn't want the world to have access to this technology. It threatens everything they've built. Max absorbed the words in silence. He didn't speak for a long time, and Elon could see the wheels turning in his young mind. Finally, Max broke the silence. They don't understand, do they? This isn't about making money or power. It's about helping people, Max said, his voice filled with a quiet conviction that was beyond his years. They're scared of something they don't understand. Elon smiled softly. It wasn't often that Max spoke with such clarity about the forces at play, but in this moment, it felt like the boy understood it better than anyone else. Still, there was something more pressing at hand. We need to find out who's behind this, Elon said, the urgency in his voice rising. We can't let them get away with it. But it's not going to be easy. The investigation into the hacking attempt had progressed, though not as quickly as Elon had hoped. The trail was cold. Whoever had orchestrated the attack had covered their tracks meticulously. The encrypted server that had been used to alter the system's data had no clear ties to anyone in Elon's immediate network. Worse still, it was being routed through multiple proxy servers in different countries, making it almost impossible to trace back to its source. Elon's thoughts drifted to the most likely suspect, the energy giants, particularly Atlas Energy. Their CEO, Reed Kingston, had made it clear that he felt threatened by Max's technology. But could they really be behind something so covert, so elaborate? Elon wasn't sure, but it was the only lead they had. He stood in front of his team the next day, briefing them on the next steps. "We're not going to let this setback stop us," he said firmly. "We need to ramp up security on all fronts. That includes our technology, our personnel, and our communications. If someone wants to play dirty, we'll make sure they can't get away with it." The engineers nodded in agreement, but Elon could tell there was a sense of unease in the room. They all knew the stakes. This wasn't just about a product or a company anymore. It was about the future of energy, the future of humanity's ability to survive beyond Earth. But despite the looming threat, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that the battle had only just begun. Whoever had attacked them wasn't acting alone. There were larger forces at play, forces that would do anything to keep the world from changing. A few days later, Max made another unexpected visit to Elon's office. His eyes were wide with a mix of excitement and something else, something Elon couldn't quite place. Max had been unusually quiet lately, consumed with his work and the looming shadow of the sabotage. But today, he was different. "Elon, I think I figured it out," Max said, his voice full of energy. "I've been running simulations on the energy system, looking for patterns. And guess what I found?" Elon raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite the mounting stress. "What did you find?" Max handed him a tablet. On the screen, a series of complex graphs and data points appeared, each one more intricate than the last. "I traced the irregularities back to a specific location," Max continued. "It's not just a hack. The data was altered in a way that only someone with access to very specific information could have done. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for." Elon's heart raced. "You're saying this wasn't random?" "No," Max said, shaking his head. "It's like they were trying to find a flaw in the system, something specific, a weakness they could exploit." Elon's mind raced as he scrolled through the data Max had uncovered. The patterns were beginning to make sense, too much sense. The interference wasn't random, it was targeted. Whoever was behind the sabotage had been looking for one specific thing, a vulnerability that could be used to destroy Max's technology before it could go global. "Elon," Max said, his voice low, "I think they were trying to steal the design. If they get their hands on it, they could build a copy of the system and claim it as their own. They don't just want to stop us, they want to steal the future." The realization hit Elon like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about halting progress, it was about ownership. Whoever had orchestrated this attack was planning to take the very heart of Max's invention and control it for themselves. Later that day, Elon arranged a meeting with his closest confidants, his legal team, security experts, and a few trusted engineers. It was time to take action. They couldn't allow the sabotage to go unchallenged. "We have to move fast," Elon said, his voice firm as he paced in front of the group. "We know they're trying to steal the energy system's blueprint, but we can't just sit back and let them. We need to lock down everything, our designs, our servers, and most importantly, our intellectual property. This isn't just a security breach. This is an attack on everything we've worked for." Max stood by Elon's side, looking every bit the part of a child genius caught in the middle of an adult world of corporate warfare. But his presence was more than symbolic. It was a reminder that the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. "We're going to protect this technology," Elon said, turning to Max. "We won't let them steal it." Max smiled up at him, his expression confident as ever. "We'll stop them, won't we?" Elon nodded. "We will." But deep down, he knew that this was just the beginning. Whoever was behind this attack wasn't going to stop at just a hack. They had a much bigger game in mind. And if Elon was going to protect Max's future and the future of humanity, he was going to have to prepare for the fight of his life. The days that followed were filled with tension and urgency. The team had increased security protocols across the board, firewalls, encryption, surveillance, but Elon knew that wasn't enough. Whoever was behind this attack had shown themselves to be resourceful, patient, and calculating. This wasn't a simple case of corporate espionage. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign to seize control of the future of energy. And as the team worked around the clock to shore up vulnerabilities, Elon began to realize the full scale of the fight they were in. One evening, as Elon sat in his office, reviewing the latest security updates, his phone buzzed. It was a text from David, his head of security. "Elon, we found something. It's not just about the designs. We've traced the hacking attempt to an offshore account. Someone's trying to buy up all the intellectual property surrounding Max's energy system. They're moving fast." Elon's blood ran cold. This wasn't just sabotage. It was an all-out attempt to control the intellectual property. Whoever was behind this was planning to patent Max's energy system and corner the market, rendering Max's work obsolete before it even had a chance to take off. It was the ultimate power play, and if they succeeded, it would be nearly impossible to undo. Elon quickly called David. "Where's the account linked to? Can we trace it back to anyone?" David's voice was grim. "We're still working on that, but the account's based in a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. We think it's a front." Elon's mind raced. The Cayman Islands. It was a common location for offshore accounts, but it wasn't just any anonymous company. It was a location used by some of the world's most powerful corporations to hide illicit activities. Whoever was behind this attack had the resources to go to great lengths. Elon's eyes shifted to Max, who was sitting quietly in the corner, tinkering with his tablet. Max had become the beating heart of this project. His ideas had already begun to change the course of history. But now, they were fighting a shadow war over it. "Elon," Max said, breaking the silence. "What's going on? You look worried." Elon paused, looking at the young boy who, despite his age, had already seen more of the world's harsh realities than most adults would in a lifetime. "There's a new development, Max," Elon said. "Someone's trying to steal your design. They want to patent it, claim it as their own, and block the world from having access to your ideas." Max's brow furrowed in confusion. "Why would they do that?" Elon sighed. "Because, Max, your invention threatens everything they've built. It's too powerful. It could change the entire energy industry, and that scares people who've spent billions trying to maintain control." Max shook his head slowly. "But that's wrong. I want to help people. Why can't they see that?" Elon placed a hand on Max's shoulder. "They don't care about that, Max. They care about power, and they'll do anything to keep it." The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and covert operations. Elon and his team worked with cybersecurity experts to trace the origin of the shell company, gathering enough evidence to bring the case to authorities. But it was clear that this battle was bigger than just legal paperwork. It was time to take more drastic action. That afternoon, Elon flew to Silicon Valley to meet with some of his most trusted allies, people who had been with him during the early days of SpaceX, Tesla, and his other ventures. Among them was Sarah, his longtime legal counsel and someone who had been instrumental in protecting his intellectual property in the past. Sarah's expertise in corporate law had saved Elon's companies more than once, and now it was time for her to help again. "Elon," Sarah said as they sat down in a conference room, "we've been monitoring the offshore account. We've also dug into the shell company, and it leads to something more disturbing. This isn't just a random company buying up patents." "What do you mean?" Elon asked, his brow furrowing. "The shell company is connected to Atlas Energy," Sarah replied. "Reed Kingston's company." Elon's heart skipped a beat. The revelation hit him like a punch to the stomach. He'd suspected Reed might be involved, but this was confirmation. Atlas Energy, the very company that had the most to lose from Max's energy system, had orchestrated this attack. They weren't just trying to stop Max. They were trying to erase his existence from the energy conversation entirely. This isn't just about sabotage, Elon said slowly, piecing the puzzle together. They're attempting to hijack everything Max has created. Sarah nodded grimly. Exactly. They know that if they can secure the patents and intellectual property, they can eliminate Max's system before it ever sees the light of day. Elon clenched his fists. How do we stop them? I've already contacted a few key players in the energy sector who are on your side. We need to expose this before they can finalize the deal. If we can get the media involved and make this public, we can stop them in their tracks. But we need to move fast. Elon felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Exposing Reed and Atlas Energy wouldn't be easy. They had far too many resources at their disposal. But if they didn't act now, Max's work, Max's future, would be buried before it even had a chance to breathe. That night, as the team continued to monitor the situation, Elon received a call from Max. The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. Elon, Max said, I've been thinking. If we can't stop them through legal means, maybe we can do something else. Something they won't expect. Elon's pulse quickened. What do you mean? I've been working on a new prototype, Max said, his voice filled with excitement. What if we launch it now? What if we make the energy system available to the public before they can stop us? Elon stared at the phone, processing the idea. Max was suggesting something bold, something that would bypass the legal and corporate forces trying to control the technology. It was a risky move, but in some ways, it was the only way to ensure that Max's work would never be stolen or hidden from the world. Max, Elon said, his voice slow with realization, you want to release the technology? Open source it. Max's voice was quiet but determined. Yes, we put it out there for anyone to use. They can't stop it once it's out in the open. The world will have access to it, no matter what they do. Elon sat back in his chair, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This was a game changer. If they released the system to the public, it would be nearly impossible for Atlas or any other company to control it. But there would be no turning back. We'll do it, Elon said, his voice filled with resolve. We'll give the world a choice, and we'll make sure they can't take it away. As the team prepared for the release, the world held its breath. The countdown to the public launch of Max's energy system had begun, and with it, the battle for control of the future was about to take a dramatic turn. What do you think of Max's bold move? Will releasing the technology to the public be enough to stop Reed Kingston and Atlas Energy? Or will they find a way to seize control anyway? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The decision to release Max's energy system to the public was a gamble, a move that could either catapult their project to global recognition or trigger a full-scale corporate war. Elon had always known that real innovation came with risks, but this was different. This was about the future of energy itself. And now, it was in Max's hands. The team worked around the clock to prepare for the launch. Max's design was revolutionary. It was a clean, renewable energy system capable of powering entire cities with minimal environmental impact. Elon knew that if they succeeded, it could change the world. But as the hours ticked down to the big reveal, a sense of unease hung in the air. They weren't just facing corporate opposition. They were taking on a system that had been entrenched for decades. The day of the launch arrived, and the atmosphere at SpaceX's headquarters was electric. A massive online event was scheduled, where the public would get its first look at the breakthrough technology. Thousands of viewers, media outlets, and energy industry leaders were expected to tune in. Max sat in front of a screen, his small fingers flying across the keys as he finalized the details of the public release. Despite the magnitude of the event, he remained calm, as if he were merely tinkering with a toy. Elon watched him from the other side of the room, silently admiring the boy's confidence. Max had become the face of this revolution, and it was clear that no matter how high the stakes, he was unshaken. Elon, everything's ready, Max said, not looking up from the screen. We're all set to go live in 10 minutes. Elon nodded. Good. Let's make history. As the countdown began, Elon felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. The world was about to see the future of energy, and they couldn't take it back once it was out there. At precisely 10 a.m., the broadcast began. Elon and Max stood side by side on stage, with an audience of engineers, supporters, and some key partners in the background. A large screen behind them displayed Max's energy system in all its glory: sleek, powerful, and, most importantly, sustainable. The crowd sat in rapt attention as Elon stepped forward to speak. "Today, we stand at the precipice of a new era in energy," Elon began, his voice steady but filled with passion. "For too long, the world has relied on outdated, polluting systems that threaten our planet and our future. But that changes today." He motioned to Max, who stepped forward, his young face lit up by the spotlight. "This is Max," Elon continued, "a 5-year-old boy who, against all odds, has invented a clean, sustainable energy system that can power our homes, our cities, and our world for generations to come." The room erupted into applause. Max's calm demeanor didn't waver, but Elon could see a spark of pride in his eyes. He had created something extraordinary, and now, the world was about to see it. "We've made the decision to release this technology to the public, free of charge, for anyone to use," Elon announced. "No patents, no strings attached. It's open source. We believe that this is the future, one where energy isn't controlled by corporations, but by the people." The applause grew louder. It was clear that Elon's words had struck a chord with the audience. The idea of free, unlimited, and sustainable energy was something the world had dreamed about for years. And now, it was a reality. As the event went live, the online stream exploded with comments. The social media buzz was instant, with millions of people watching the live stream and sharing their thoughts. The hashtag #MaxEnergy trended worldwide within minutes. But amid the excitement, a darker undercurrent began to take shape. Reed Kingston's name began to pop up in the comments section, and the tone shifted. People began to question who would really benefit from this technology, who had the power to control it once it was out in the world. Back in Elon's office, the mood quickly turned somber. The public unveiling was a success in terms of exposure, but Elon knew the battle wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. Within hours of the launch, the first wave of retaliation came in the form of an aggressive legal threat. A team of corporate lawyers from Atlas Energy sent a cease and desist letter, claiming that Max's design infringed on patents held by their company. They demanded that all further dissemination of the technology be halted immediately, or they would take legal action. Elon's phone buzzed with messages from Sarah, his legal counsel, who was already working to craft a response. "Reed's making his move," Sarah wrote. "They're not wasting any time." Elon clenched his jaw. He had expected something like this, but what Reed hadn't anticipated was the public support they had garnered. The flood of social media attention, combined with the public outcry against corporate control of energy resources, had shifted the narrative. This wasn't just about a company trying to suppress a rival, it was about a movement. "Elon, we need to move fast," Sarah had texted. "The legal strategy is important, but we also need to engage with the media. Public opinion is on our side right now. If we back down, we lose everything." The following days were a blur of legal maneuvering, media appearances, and counterattacks from Atlas Energy. As anticipated, Reed Kingston's company ramped up its efforts, filing multiple lawsuits, publicly questioning the legitimacy of Max's technology, and even going so far as to accuse Elon and Max of stealing trade secrets. Elon was forced to respond quickly, but he had a plan. He didn't just want to fight back. He wanted to expose Atlas for what it was: a monopolistic entity intent on controlling the future of energy at any cost. Elon, with Sarah's help, began to leverage their newfound public platform. They held press conferences, conducted interviews, and released detailed documentation showing how Atlas Energy had been working to suppress any advancements in sustainable energy for years. They even made Max the face of the movement, giving him a platform to speak directly to the public. "The world deserves better than this," Max said in a live interview. His words simple yet powerful. "We can't keep using energy that harms our planet. My system is free because it belongs to everyone, not just a few people who want to control it." The media response was overwhelming. Public support for Max and Elon skyrocketed, and soon, protests began to pop up outside Atlas Energy's headquarters, demanding they drop their legal actions and allow the technology to flourish. It was clear that the tide was turning, but even as the public rallied behind them, Elon knew this was only the beginning. Reed Kingston would not give up so easily. He had too much power and too much at stake. Max and Elon sat together in the conference room late one night, reviewing the latest news updates. The media frenzy had intensified, and more companies were beginning to show interest in collaborating with Max on future projects. Still, there was no sign that Reed was backing down. "Elon, we did the right thing, didn't we?" Max asked, his voice quiet but filled with a wisdom beyond his years. Elon smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "Yes, Max, we did, but the fight isn't over yet. There's more to come." Max nodded thoughtfully. "But we'll win, won't we?" Elon met his gaze. "We will. Together." The battle was far from over. As the public support for Max's energy system swelled, the pressure mounted from all sides. Reed Kingston and Atlas Energy weren't backing down. But what Elon and Max hadn't anticipated was how deep the network of corporate power went. Their opponents were not just fighting a legal battle. They were leveraging every tool at their disposal to undermine Max's work and make sure it stayed under corporate control. The weeks following the public unveiling were a whirlwind. The media buzz around Max's energy system had reached a fever pitch, with new stories breaking every day. On the surface, it seemed like a victory. The idea of open-source, free energy had captured the public imagination. But behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. Atlas Energy's legal team filed an injunction to prevent Max's technology from being distributed any further. They argued that the system was dangerously untested and unregulated, and that releasing it to the public could result in catastrophic failures. The public response was mixed, but with each new legal challenge, more supporters of Max's system rallied to his side. It seemed like the world was united behind the idea of free energy, but the corporate forces in the shadows were growing stronger. It was late one evening when Elon received a call from Sarah. She was agitated, more so than he had ever heard her. "Elon, we have a problem," she said, her voice laced with urgency. "What happened?" Elon asked, leaning forward in his chair. "I've been digging deeper into Atlas Energy's financials, and there's something you need to know. It's bigger than we thought. Reed isn't just fighting to control Max's technology. He's involved in something much more sinister." Elon's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "There are whispers, but I've been able to trace some funding back to one of the world's largest oil conglomerates," Sarah said. "Atlas Energy's been working with them in secret to block any advancements in renewable energy for years. They're not just trying to suppress Max's invention. They're trying to maintain control of the entire energy market, and they'll stop at nothing to keep it." Elon felt a chill run down his spine. He had always suspected that corporate greed played a part in Reed Kingston's actions, but he hadn't realized the extent to which it was entrenched in a much larger, global conspiracy. This was no longer just a battle for control of Max's energy system. It was a fight for the future of the planet itself. As the days passed, more and more evidence came to light about the extent of Atlas Energy's collusion with other powerful corporations. Their strategy was clear: suppress any technological advancements that threaten their profit model, and use any means necessary to ensure their monopoly on the world's energy resources. The web of corruption stretched from corporate boardrooms to the highest levels of government, with insiders working to slow the adoption of renewable technologies. But despite the mounting pressure, Elon remained resolute. The stakes were higher than ever, and he couldn't afford to back down. He knew that the public was beginning to understand the true scale of the fight. Max's invention wasn't just about clean energy. It was about disrupting an entire system of control that had held the world hostage for decades. Elon called a meeting with his team, which now included some of the best journalists, activists, and whistleblowers who had stepped forward to expose the corruption at Atlas Energy. They needed to take this battle to the next level. "We need to expose them for what they are," Elon said, his voice filled with conviction. "We need to show the world that Atlas Energy and the corporate behemoths behind it will stop at nothing to protect their stranglehold on the world's energy." Max, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "I think it's time to show them what I've been working on. If they can't stop me from releasing my system, maybe I can show them the future." A future where everyone has access to free energy and no one has the power to control it. Elon looked at Max, a mixture of admiration and disbelief in his eyes. Max wasn't just the face of the revolution. He was the revolution itself. The next phase of their plan was risky. Elon and Max would not only continue the legal battle, but they would also go on the offensive. They would leak the damning evidence of Atlas Energy's collusion with the oil conglomerates. They would target the heart of the problem, an energy market manipulated by corporate giants, and expose it to the world. Sarah worked with investigative journalists to compile an exposé that would blow the lid off the energy industry's corruption. Meanwhile, Elon and Max's team ramped up their efforts to refine and perfect the energy system. They didn't just want to release it. They wanted to make sure it worked flawlessly when it did. They had no intention of giving Atlas or any other corporate entity the chance to claim it was unregulated or dangerously untested. The exposé was scheduled to release in a week, but tensions were already high. As the team prepared for the upcoming media storm, Max came to Elon with an idea that would accelerate their plans. "I've been thinking," Max said one evening, looking up from his tablet, "what if I could do something more? Something that would show the world we're serious?" Elon looked at him, unsure of what Max was suggesting. "What do you mean?" "I've been working on a more advanced prototype," Max said. "What if we set up a demonstration, live, in front of the world? I can power an entire city with it and show that it's safe, clean, and can work anywhere. If we do that, no one can deny that it works." Elon stared at Max, stunned. "You're saying we can power a city? Right now?" Max smiled. "Why wait? I've already tested the systems in small-scale environments. We can scale it up quickly." Elon stood up, pacing the room as he processed Max's proposal. It was risky, far riskier than anything they had done before, but it was also the perfect way to make their point. If they could show the world that this technology wasn't just a concept but a fully functioning reality, they could push Atlas Energy and its allies into a corner. There would be no turning back. "We'll do it," Elon said, his voice resolute. "We'll demonstrate it. And we'll do it bigger than anyone could imagine." Plans were set into motion immediately. The team identified a small city in California, one with a large enough population and infrastructure to support the demonstration. Elon and Max's goal was to power the entire city with Max's energy system for a full week, showcasing its efficiency, sustainability, and scalability. It would be a live demonstration that no one could ignore. The media coverage surrounding the event was massive. News outlets from around the world sent reporters to cover what was being billed as a historic demonstration. Activists, environmentalists, and supporters of Max's open-source energy system rallied in droves to witness the event, while Atlas Energy's corporate allies scrambled to figure out how they could respond. Elon and Max stood together at the center of the demonstration, surrounded by cameras and onlookers. Max, looking every bit the part of a young visionary, calmly explained the technology behind his system to the crowd. "This is the future," Max said, his voice steady. "This is a world where energy is free, clean, and available to everyone, where no one controls the power but the people." As the system powered up, the entire city came to life, illuminated by the energy Max had created. People cheered, and the world watched in awe as the impossible became reality. The demonstration was flawless, and it was clear. This was the future. But even as the world celebrated, Elon knew this was only one battle in a larger war. The forces behind Atlas Energy and their corporate allies wouldn't go down without a fight. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. They had proven that the impossible was possible. They had shown the world that the future of energy wasn't in the hands of corporate giants. It was in the hands of the people. Elon watched the crowds cheer, but there was an unsettling calm beneath the celebration. The demonstration had been an unprecedented success. Max's energy system was now powering an entire city, a feat that most experts had deemed impossible just months ago. But while the world hailed them as pioneers of a new energy revolution, behind the scenes, the battle was far from won. Max's invention was a game-changer. There was no denying that. But with the success of the demonstration came something else, something darker: the inevitable backlash. As the world marveled at the free, sustainable energy flowing through the city, Atlas Energy had gone silent. For days, there was no word, no official statement. But Elon knew better than to assume the opposition had surrendered. The corporate giants behind Atlas Energy would regroup. They would find a way to maintain their stranglehold on the energy market, no matter the cost. The day after the demonstration, Elon met with Sarah in his office. The walls were lined with monitors, each streaming a live feed of media outlets covering Max's groundbreaking achievement. The phones were ringing off the hook, with interview requests, offers for partnerships, and inquiries from governments around the world. It was a new era, but one that came with an enormous amount of attention. Elon, Sarah began, pacing the room, her face drawn with concern. There's something we need to discuss. It's not just Atlas Energy we need to worry about. Elon raised an eyebrow, his mind already racing through the possibilities. What are you talking about? It's bigger than that, she said, her voice tight. I've been digging deeper into the industry. I've uncovered some troubling things. The oil companies, they're pulling strings we didn't see. And I've got reason to believe that there's more going on behind the scenes than just corporate sabotage. Elon's mind raced as he absorbed the gravity of her words. He had known the oil industry was going to fight back. They had too much to lose. But this was different. If Sarah's suspicions were true, they were up against more than just corporate interests. They were facing an entire system, a network of power that spanned governments, corporations, and financial institutions, all of them invested in maintaining the status quo. What are we up against? Elon asked. Sarah handed him a file. It was filled with documents, contracts, emails, and communications that traced a complex web of influence. There were familiar names, Atlas Energy, of course, but also major oil companies, lobbyists, and even a few government agencies that had been linked to efforts to suppress renewable energy. We're dealing with a coordinated campaign, Sarah said grimly. They've been trying to sabotage us from the start. I think they were waiting for this moment, the moment when Max's technology was about to become undeniable. And now they're ready to make their move. Elon's thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of his phone. It was an international news outlet requesting a live interview. He knew that taking the spotlight was necessary, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their enemies were quietly maneuvering in the background. He quickly made a decision. Cancel all interviews for today. We need to get ahead of whatever this is. Sarah nodded. I'll continue to monitor for any developments. But be ready, Elon. We might be in for the fight of our lives. The following days were a whirlwind. While the demonstration of Max's energy system continued to gain traction, Elon and Sarah kept a close eye on any signs of retaliation. But it wasn't until a week later that the full force of their adversaries' counterattack became clear. It came in the form of a devastating cyber attack. Late one evening, as Elon and his team were reviewing updates to the energy system software, they were hit. The monitors blinked out, and then a series of flashing alerts filled the screens. A massive cyber attack had been launched against their infrastructure. Within seconds, the hackers breached their systems, disabling critical parts of the software that controlled the energy grid in the demonstration city. Max's technology, once operating smoothly, was now rendered useless. The power went out, plunging the city back into darkness. Elon's heart sank. It was clear who was behind this. Atlas Energy's move was swift and brutal. Sarah, Elon shouted, panic rising in his chest. She rushed in, her face pale. I've seen it. They've wiped out our backup servers. They're not just trying to stop us. They're trying to destroy everything. Elon cursed under his breath. We need to get this fixed now. We can't let them control the narrative. It took hours, long, grueling hours, of fighting off the hackers, restoring what they could, and ensuring that Max's technology wasn't permanently damaged. But by the time the city's lights flickered back on, the damage had already been done. The press was already reporting on the failure of the demonstration. People were questioning the validity of Max's system, and conspiracy theories about its safety and viability began to spread like wildfire. Despite the best efforts of Elon and his team, the narrative was shifting. Atlas Energy had turned the attack into a media spectacle, painting Max's energy system as an unreliable, dangerous technology that could not be trusted to power even a small city. Elon and Max were in the conference room the following morning, staring at the flood of negative headlines. Max's energy system, which had been celebrated as a revolutionary breakthrough just days before, was now under scrutiny. Elon knew that they couldn't afford to stay passive. They needed to act fast and act decisively. Elon, Max said quietly, breaking the silence, I think we need to show them that we can fix this, and we need to do it in front of everyone. If we don't, they'll keep attacking us. Elon met Max's gaze. The boy's eyes were clear, focused, determined. He was right. This wasn't just about the technology anymore. It was about the message they sent to the world. If they let this attack go unanswered, it would undermine everything they had worked for. Max's hands were already flying over the controls as he worked to isolate the source of the cyber attack. Elon watched in awe as the young genius began reprogramming the system, making adjustments and repairs with an ease that only he possessed. We're going to fix this, Max said, and we're going to do it live. I'll restore the grid, and this time, we'll make it stronger than ever. It's the only way to show them that they can't stop us. The decision was made. Elon and Max would do a live, global broadcast, showing the world how they had restored the system and made it even more resilient to future attacks. It was a bold move, but it was the only one they had. The broadcast was set for the following evening, and the world tuned in. As the cameras rolled, Elon and Max stood together, their faces illuminated by the glow of the control panels behind them. This is Max, Elon said, his voice calm but determined. He's the young genius who built the energy system that powers this city. Yesterday, we were attacked, but today, we're back, stronger than ever. Max stood at the controls, his fingers dancing across the screen as the city's lights flickered on. A cheer erupted from the crowd as the power grid came online. This time, more stable and more secure. We won't back down, Max said, his voice steady as he looked directly into the camera. No one controls the future of energy. It belongs to everyone. And no one, not Atlas Energy, not the oil companies, can take that away. The world watched, captivated. The message was clear. Max and Elon were not just innovators. They were warriors in the fight for the future of the planet. The battle was far from over, but this was a turning point. If they could survive this counterattack, they could survive anything. The world had been watching, and the response to Max and Elon's live broadcast was nothing short of explosive. What had initially seemed like a massive setback, Max's energy system crashing due to a cyber attack, had been turned into a resounding victory. The power grid had been restored and made even more resilient in a matter of hours, with Max taking the lead on the repairs, his young genius on full display. The public, already enamored with Max's vision, saw this as proof that not only was the technology revolutionary, but so was the boy behind it. But despite the global outpouring of support, something darker was still lurking. The true depth of the corporate opposition was becoming clearer by the day. Atlas Energy, along with its network of oil industry backers, weren't just fighting to suppress Max's technology, they were now mobilizing their last, most dangerous weapon, public opinion. The following days were a blur of media campaigns, courtroom battles, and political maneuvering. Atlas Energy had launched an aggressive counteroffensive, hiring top-tier PR firms and lobbyists to sway public sentiment. They flooded the news with carefully curated stories about the dangers of unregulated technology, citing vague concerns over safety, national security, and economic stability. These stories weren't just about Max's system. They were about the idea of free, decentralized energy itself. The narrative was clear. A world where anyone could generate their own energy was too unstable, too unpredictable. It could never replace the current system. Max, on the other hand, was determined to not let these forces control the narrative. He had already proved his technology's worth in the face of a cyber attack. Now, he needed to go one step further. Max and Elon sat across from each other in their private meeting room, the tension palpable. Elon could see the fire in Max's eyes. Despite being only 5 years old, the boy had a focus and resolve that most adults couldn't match. But even Max couldn't ignore the gravity of the situation. The forces aligned against them were formidable. We need to show the world that this isn't just about one city, Max said, his voice steady. We need to show them it's a global solution, something they can't ignore. Elon nodded, considering the implications. You're right. We've been reactive up until now, putting out fires and defending ourselves. But if we really want to change the narrative, we need to take the offensive. We need a global demonstration, something that proves that this system can work everywhere. Max's eyes lit up. I've been thinking about that. I can power a whole country. I can show them that it's scalable. I'll take it beyond just one city. This isn't just about a local victory. This is about the future of every city, every home, every country. Elon felt a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension. A demonstration on a global scale would be groundbreaking, but it would also be the riskiest move they had made yet. If they could pull it off, it would be an irreversible shift in the conversation about energy. But if they failed, the consequences could be catastrophic. Max, Elon said slowly, choosing his words carefully, if we do this, we need to make sure it's flawless. We can't afford any mistakes. Max grinned. Don't worry, Elon. I've already figured out the math. The next few days were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Max's team worked around the clock, upgrading and refining the energy system. Elon rallied global leaders and influencers who had shown support for the technology, including environmental groups, renewable energy advocates, and policy experts. Together, they began planning a live global broadcast, a demonstration of Max's system that would power an entire country. The nation they chose was Costa Rica. Costa Rica was already a global leader in sustainability, with a reputation for making ambitious strides in environmental conservation. The country was the perfect candidate for Max's demonstration. It had a relatively small population, making it an ideal testing ground for their technology. Plus, the government had already expressed interest in advancing renewable energy initiatives. Costa Rica's progressive stance made it the perfect symbol for a world that was ready for a new energy paradigm. The plan was simple yet audacious. Max's system would power the entire country for a week, showcasing not just its functionality, but its ability to scale and provide energy to an entire nation. The demonstration would be streamed live across the globe, with reporters stationed in key locations across Costa Rica to capture every moment. It would be the ultimate proof that Max's system wasn't just a theory, it was the future. The night before the demonstration, Elon and Max stood on a balcony overlooking the small coastal town where they had set up their operations. The sky was clear, and the stars shone brightly over the ocean. For a moment, it felt like everything had led up to this point. The stakes were higher than ever, but the sense of inevitability was palpable. Tomorrow's the day, Elon said, his voice quiet but determined. Are you ready? Max, standing next to him, looked out at the horizon. His expression was calm, focused. He had the same quiet confidence that had driven him from the very beginning. I'm ready, Max said. This is what it's all about. The morning of the demonstration arrived, and the atmosphere in Costa Rica was electric. People gathered in the streets, eager to witness the moment that had the potential to change the world. The media coverage was extensive. News outlets from every corner of the globe had dispatched reporters to cover the event. Some were skeptics, others were hopeful, but all were watching closely. Max and Elon stood backstage, watching the screens as the countdown began. The live broadcast would begin in a few minutes. Elon turned to Max, who was at the helm of the energy system, his tiny fingers poised over the controls. The boy was about to do something that no one had ever dreamed possible. He was about to show the world that a new energy future was within reach. Elon, Max said, looking up at him with a smile, this is going to work. It's going to change everything. I know, Elon said, his voice full of pride. You've already changed everything, Max. This is just the beginning. The countdown hit 0, and the broadcast began. As the camera panned across Costa Rica's lush landscapes, it captured the thousands of people who had gathered in the streets, waiting for the moment when Max's system would power their country. A few reporters interviewed locals, asking what they thought of the demonstration. Some were skeptical, others optimistic, but all were watching with bated breath. Then, with a signal from Max, the energy system went live. The screens in the broadcast room lit up, showing the power grid coming online in real time. The cameras captured homes, businesses, and public spaces flickering to life as Max's energy system began supplying power to the entire country. As the lights came on across Costa Rica, the crowd erupted into applause. The energy system worked. It worked flawlessly. The world watched in awe as Max's system, This young genius's vision delivered power to an entire nation. It was a moment of triumph, but also one of defiance. This wasn't just about Costa Rica. It was a statement. A statement that the future of energy was no longer in the hands of corporate giants or outdated governments. It was in the hands of people like Max, innovators who refused to be silenced. As the demonstration continued, the camera shifted to Elon, who stood with Max at the control station, watching the results unfold. Elon's heart swelled with pride. This wasn't just a victory for Max. This was a victory for the planet. The energy system wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a symbol of hope, of possibility, of a world where people could take control of their own futures. And as the broadcast reached its peak, Elon knew that this was only the beginning. The world would never be the same again. But Max's work was far from over. In the back of Elon's mind, he knew that while this moment was historic, the real battle was still ahead. They had won this fight, but there were still many more to come. The success of the Costa Rica demonstration had sent shockwaves around the world. For days, news outlets buzzed with headlines like, "The future of energy has arrived, a young genius powers a nation," and "Max revolutionizes global energy." What Max had accomplished was nothing short of extraordinary. He had proven that free, decentralized energy could work on a national scale. The crowds in Costa Rica cheered, but the true victory lay in the fact that millions of people worldwide were watching, listening, and finally understanding the magnitude of what had been achieved. But while the world celebrated, the corporate giants, the ones who had once controlled the world's energy systems, were not idle. The success of the demonstration had rattled their foundations. And now, with Max's technology out in the open, they were about to unleash their most formidable weapon yet. Back in their headquarters, Elon paced back and forth in his office, his mind racing. The victory had been immense, but he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was coming. The corporate resistance had to be planning something, and whatever it was, it would be bigger, more destructive than anything they had faced before. "I've been hearing whispers," Sarah said, stepping into the room with a grave expression. "Corporate executives are holding closed-door meetings. The oil companies, Atlas Energy, they're aligning their efforts. And the government, they're getting involved." Elon stopped pacing and turned to her, his heart sinking. "Involved in what?" "They're preparing a legal battle," Sarah continued, pulling up a document on her tablet. "The regulatory bodies have already been notified. They're going to argue that Max's technology poses a security risk, something about unauthorized energy generation being a threat to national infrastructure. They want to shut down the demonstrations, take legal action, and prevent anyone from using the system outside of controlled environments." Elon let out a sharp breath. "Of course, they'll try to shut us down under the guise of security concerns. It's always the same playbook. First, they try to suppress with fear, and then they use the legal system to destroy." Max, who had been sitting quietly on the couch, stood up and walked over to the window. His expression was calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes that reflected the gravity of the situation. He was no stranger to adversity, and this challenge was no different. "They think they can stop us with paperwork and politics," Max said softly, "but they don't understand the technology. They don't understand how powerful it is. We've proven that it works. We've shown them that it can scale. This isn't something that can be controlled with a law or a regulation." Elon nodded, his voice tinged with admiration. "You're right. We've shown the world what's possible. But now the battle's going to shift. If we're going to win, we need to outsmart them. We can't just rely on public support. We need to fight back in ways they never saw coming." That night, as Max and Elon sat in the lab, they brainstormed a new strategy. The pressure was mounting, and their enemies were powerful. But Max had an idea, a way to turn the tables on the very system that was trying to shut them down. "What if we use their tactics against them?" Max said, his voice steady with conviction. "What if we challenge their narrative and expose their corruption?" Elon raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Max walked over to a series of white boards covered in equations and diagrams. "We already know that the energy companies are scared. They're going to keep pushing the idea that our technology is dangerous. But what if we showed that their systems are even more dangerous?" Max's fingers moved quickly, drawing connections between power grids, fossil fuel infrastructure, and environmental degradation. What if we could expose the environmental and economic risks of their reliance on fossil fuels? What if we could show the world just how much they're profiting from the destruction of the planet? We could turn the narrative in our favor. Elon stared at the whiteboard, realizing the brilliance of Max's plan. It wasn't enough to just present Max's technology as the future. They needed to dismantle the very foundations of the system that was fighting back. They needed to show the world that the fight wasn't just about energy, it was about survival. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Max, Elon, and Sarah worked tirelessly to gather evidence, conduct interviews, and compile data that would expose the corruption of the energy giants. They focused on the environmental destruction caused by the fossil fuel industry, the political lobbying that kept outdated energy systems in place, and the massive profits made by a few companies at the expense of the planet. They began releasing their findings to the public in a series of social media campaigns, documentaries, and reports that went viral. They showed the world the truth, how the oil and gas industry had been systematically suppressing renewable energy for decades, manipulating governments, and lobbying to ensure that they remained in control of the world's energy supply. The response was immediate. People were outraged. Environmentalists, activists, and ordinary citizens began to rally behind Max and Elon's cause. Protests broke out in cities around the world. People demanded action. They wanted change, and they wanted it now. The fight had shifted, but the corporate giants were not going down without a fight. As public support for Max and his technology grew, the backlash became more intense. Atlas Energy launched a full-scale PR war, accusing Max's system of being untested and dangerous. They had hired scientists and engineers to discredit the claims of safety and sustainability, claiming that the technology was unregulated and had not undergone proper testing. But Max, with Elon's help, countered every argument. They began releasing live demonstrations, new cities, new regions where Max's system was now functioning without a hitch. They partnered with leading climate organizations and scientists who confirmed the safety and viability of the technology. Still, the government was not backing down. In a dramatic turn of events, the authorities issued a formal injunction, citing national security risks and demanding that the demonstration projects be halted immediately. They claimed that Max's energy grid, if used by multiple countries, could pose a threat to global infrastructure. Max and Elon sat in a conference room, looking at the legal documents in front of them. The government had made its move, and they had no choice but to fight back. "We knew this was coming," Elon said, looking at the injunction with a grim expression. "They're using national security as an excuse to shut us down. But this time, it's different. We've got the people on our side. We've got the momentum." Max, who had been silent up until this point, stood up. He had a fire in his eyes, the kind that made Elon's heart swell with pride. "I'm not backing down," Max said firmly. "I'll take them to court if I have to. This is bigger than just us. It's about the future of the planet, and I won't let them stop us." Elon smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. He knew that Max was right. This fight was about more than just technology or even money. It was about the survival of the planet. And if anyone could change the world, it was Max. What do you think? Can Max and Elon win this fight against the government and the corporate giants? Will the people rally behind them to make this revolution unstoppable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The battle had reached its tipping point. The forces aligned against Max and Elon were vast, but the momentum was undeniable. As the injunction loomed over them, the world was divided. On one side stood the powerful corporate giants, oil companies, energy monopolies, and political backers, desperate to preserve the status quo. On the other stood a 5-year-old genius and a visionary entrepreneur, armed with the most revolutionary energy technology the world had ever seen. The legal challenges mounted daily. Every attempt to counter Atlas Energy's PR campaigns felt like a step forward only to be met with 2 steps back. The media frenzy had reached new heights, with news outlets pitting Max's supporters against his detractors. In the midst of the chaos, one thing was clear. This was no longer just about energy. This was a battle for the future of humanity. Max, despite his young age, had become the face of a global movement, a symbol of hope for millions who had longed for a cleaner, more sustainable world. But even as his popularity soared, the challenges only grew tougher. The energy giants, realizing the gravity of the situation, were preparing their last, most desperate move. The injunction from the government wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was part of a larger strategy to discredit Max's work, stop his demonstrations, and, if necessary, shut down his technology completely. In their headquarters, Elon was pacing again. His fingers drummed against the table as he looked at the latest court documents. The legal system was now moving at an alarming speed, and every day that passed without a resolution meant more time for the energy companies to push their agenda. "We can't keep playing defense," Elon muttered, more to himself than anyone else in the room. "We've been reactive all along, waiting for them to make the next move. But that's not going to work anymore. We need to take this fight to the next level." Max, who had been quietly watching the news coverage on a screen, turned to face Elon. The look in his eyes was fierce, unwavering. He was used to the pressure. In fact, he thrived on it. "I know what we need to do," Max said. His voice was small but firm, and Elon could feel the weight of his words. "We take the fight to the people. We turn this into a global movement. We'll show them that they can't stop us, not when we have the world on our side." Elon raised an eyebrow. "What exactly are you thinking?" Max didn't hesitate. "We hold a global summit, a live-streamed event that shows the power of my energy system at scale, in real time. We make it so big, so undeniable, that not even the government or the corporations can ignore it." The idea was audacious, bold. It was a call to arms, a declaration that Max and his team wouldn't back down. A global summit would not only demonstrate the power of the technology, but it would force world leaders to take a stand. If they refused to act in the face of overwhelming evidence, the public pressure would be immense. Over the next few weeks, preparations for the global summit began. Max, Elon, and their team worked tirelessly to coordinate logistics, secure international partners, and plan every detail. They would stream the event live to every corner of the globe, showcasing how Max's energy system could power cities, regions, and countries, all in real time. They chose 3 locations to highlight: one in Africa, one in South America, and one in Europe. These regions represented different challenges and opportunities for the implementation of renewable energy. Costa Rica had already proven the technology's viability in a small-scale setting. Now they would show the world that it could scale to meet the needs of entire continents. Max's energy system would be deployed in 3 different countries, with multiple energy grids feeding into a unified network that would be broadcast to millions of people. It was a bold move, one that would either prove the world-changing potential of the system or unravel everything they had fought for. But Elon knew it was the only way forward. They had to show the world the truth, unfiltered and undeniable. The summit day arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. In Costa Rica, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting golden rays across the landscape. Max and Elon stood in front of the live cameras, watching as the final preparations were made. They had a global audience in the millions, and this was their moment to make history. "I think it's time," Elon said, turning to Max, who was once again at the helm of the energy system. Max looked up at him and smiled. "Let's do this." The event began with a stunning visual: Max's energy system powering cities in Africa, South America, and Europe, all at once. The cameras flashed across the screen, showing homes, factories, and public institutions coming online in real time as the power grid hummed to life. The energy flowed seamlessly, the cities coming alive with the sustainable power Max's technology had promised. As the broadcast continued, Elon and Max stood on stage, explaining the technology and its implications. Elon spoke about the environmental destruction caused by traditional energy sources, while Max detailed how his system would not only eliminate the need for fossil fuels, but also create a more equitable energy future for everyone. The broadcast also featured interviews with world leaders, climate activists, and scientists, many of whom had been skeptical of Max's technology at first but were now among its staunchest advocates. They spoke about the importance of innovation, the need for global cooperation, and the undeniable evidence that Max's system could work on a planetary scale. But even as the broadcast unfolded, the energy companies and political figures who had once tried to silence Max were pulling every string they could. Atlas Energy was fighting back with everything they had, deploying lobbyists, bribing politicians, and attempting to discredit the summit in the media. They painted Max as a dangerous child prodigy, someone who didn't understand the complexities of the energy grid, someone who was too naive to grasp the consequences of his actions. They were losing, but they were determined not to go down without a fight. Max's summit reached its climax when a major announcement was made. Max and Elon had partnered with multiple countries and environmental organizations to create a new global initiative, a coalition that would support the worldwide rollout of Max's energy technology. This initiative would be backed by world governments, corporations, and citizens, and it would guarantee the future of decentralized, renewable energy. The final announcement shook the world. At that moment, the global press reported that, in response to the overwhelming support for Max's technology, the United Nations had decided to endorse the initiative. The UN would spearhead efforts to transition countries to renewable energy and would provide funding for the development and implementation of the new system. It was the largest agreement of its kind in history. But just as victory seemed within reach, the final battle approached. Atlas Energy, in a last-ditch effort to maintain control, filed a lawsuit against Max and the UN. The lawsuit claimed that Max's system violated international energy regulations, and they demanded that all operations be halted immediately. Max, standing before the cameras once again, addressed the issue directly. "This is it," he said, his voice resonating with the confidence of a true leader. "They will try to stop us. They will do whatever they can to keep the world tied to outdated systems. But the truth is, they can't stop progress. They can't stop what's inevitable. The future is now, and it's up to us to take it." The world held its breath as the lawsuit made its way through the courts, but with public opinion on Max's side, the pressure on the judicial system was immense. And when the final verdict was announced, it was a resounding victory. The courts ruled in favor of Max's technology, recognizing that it was not just legal but essential for the future of the planet. Max had won. The world had won. But this was just the beginning. The energy revolution had started, and it was unstoppable. The victory had come at last. It was a moment of immense relief, but also one of profound reflection. Max and Elon sat in the quiet of the conference room, watching the final media reports come in. News stations across the world were declaring it. The global energy revolution had begun. Max, the 5-year-old genius who had once been dismissed as a prodigy with wild ideas, was now being hailed as the architect of a new world order. His technology was no longer a concept or a dream. It was reality. The decentralized energy system that Max had created was now powering millions of homes, schools, hospitals, and industries. It was no longer about theory. It was about action, transformation, and hope for the future. Elon, watching the young boy beside him, felt a swell of pride. He had seen many brilliant minds throughout his life, but none like Max. The clarity in his vision, the drive in his actions, it was something truly extraordinary. And, perhaps most surprisingly, it was Max's unyielding belief in the future that had brought them this far. "Max," Elon said, breaking the silence. "We did it." Max's eyes sparkled with that familiar intensity. "We did," he replied simply. "But it's not over yet." The world was still adjusting to the magnitude of what had happened. Governments, corporations, and citizens all had to grapple with the fact that the energy grid they had relied upon for centuries was becoming obsolete. Fossil fuels, which had once powered the world, were rapidly being replaced by renewable energy systems based on Max's technology. The transition wasn't immediate. It couldn't be. The infrastructure was vast, and the process of updating energy grids around the globe would take years. But the shift was clear. Countries began investing heavily in renewable resources with a focus on decentralizing their energy systems. No longer would energy be controlled by a few powerful corporations. It would be something that belonged to everyone. As Max's system scaled up, new partnerships formed. The UN Energy Initiative had secured significant funding from governments, philanthropists, and international organizations. Cities and towns that had never had reliable electricity now had access to clean, free energy. The benefits were felt in places that had once been left behind: remote communities in Africa, impoverished regions in South America, and island nations in the Pacific. The economic impact was staggering. Global poverty rates began to decrease as new jobs were created in the green energy sector. Farmers, no longer at the mercy of expensive electricity bills, saw their businesses flourish. The demand for renewable energy technology spurred innovation in new fields, from electric vehicles to sustainable manufacturing. Yet, for all the progress, the fight was far from over. There were still pockets of resistance. Powerful corporations who refused to let go of their stranglehold on the energy market, politicians who stood to lose their influence, and regions where the transition to renewable energy was slower than expected. In some places, the old systems had been so deeply entrenched that any change seemed impossible. In a quiet corner of the world, in a small but growing tech hub in Silicon Valley, a new team was forming. Max's work was being expanded upon, refined, and perfected. Engineers, scientists, and innovators had come together to tackle the next phase of the energy revolution. It was a far-reaching vision that Max had in mind. Not just clean energy, but a self-sustaining world. Max sat with a group of these innovators in a sleek, modern lab, surrounded by cutting-edge technology. "We need to take it even further," he said, looking at the team. Max's system was just the start. "We need to think about how we can make energy production even more efficient, even more decentralized. What if we could make every home, every building, a power generator on its own? What if we could harness the energy from the movements of the earth, from the sun, and from even the smallest sources?" The room went silent as the implications of Max's words settled in. Every person in the room felt a spark of inspiration. They knew they were on the verge of something monumental, something that would change everything once again. The power struggle wasn't over. While the energy giants had lost their monopoly, they were still trying to reclaim some control over the new energy landscape. Legal battles continued as they sought to undermine the UN Energy Initiative and stall the adoption of Max's technology in certain regions. But Max and Elon had become more than just symbols of change. They were the vanguard of a movement that had caught fire. It wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about taking power back from the hands of the few and returning it to the people. Max had learned that the true power of his system wasn't just in the technology itself, but in its potential to inspire a new way of thinking. A way of thinking that questioned long-held beliefs about who should control the world's resources and how those resources should be used. For the first time in history, the world had a real chance to rewrite the rules. And Max, despite his age, was leading the charge. Weeks passed, and the global transformation continued. Max's system was integrated into energy grids all around the world. In cities like Cape Town, Medellin, and Jakarta, the lights were on, powered by the sun and wind. Free energy for the people. Governments were passing laws to incentivize further development of renewable energy infrastructure. Businesses that had once thrived on fossil fuels were scrambling to pivot to cleaner technologies, or risk being left behind. But the battle was not without its tolls. Even as the world celebrated the unprecedented changes, there were casualties. Old power structures fought tooth and nail to maintain their hold. People who had profited from the traditional systems were now facing bankruptcy or collapse. And those who had once stood in opposition to Max's ideas, who had once called him a dreamer, a child, were now watching helplessly as their empires crumbled. Max, however, was undeterred. He had learned, through every challenge, that change didn't come without sacrifice. It required strength, resilience, and above all, vision. And Max had plenty of that. One night, as Max sat in front of his computer, scrolling through messages of support from around the world, he received a call from Elon. The line was clear, but there was something in Elon's voice that made Max pause. "We did it," Elon said, his tone somber. "The transition is almost complete. Max, you've done something that no one thought was possible. You've changed the world." Max smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "It's not just me," he replied. "It's everyone who believed, everyone who helped, everyone who stood up for what's right." Elon let out a quiet laugh. "True, but you were the spark that started it all." Max nodded thoughtfully. "We've made a difference, but I think there's still so much more to do. We can't stop here." Elon chuckled, his admiration for Max unwavering. "I wouldn't dream of it." As the years passed, Max's influence only grew. From the shadows of the energy giants, The world moved into an era of freedom, sustainability, and innovation. Max, now not just a genius but a global leader, continued to challenge the boundaries of what was possible. His work was a testament to the power of human ingenuity, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unwavering belief that even the smallest voice could change the world. The world had entered a new era, one built on the pillars of hope, innovation, and a new understanding of power. And it was just beginning. The global shift toward renewable energy had not only transformed the way the world powered itself, but had also unleashed a new wave of ideological warfare. The triumph of Max's technology, while a victory for millions of people, had also invited a wave of backlash that most had underestimated. The world's energy giants, political elites, and entrenched systems of power were not going to relinquish control so easily. Even after Max's revolutionary energy system had been integrated across the globe, the fight for the future of energy was far from over. In boardrooms, back-alley negotiations, and shadowy corridors of power, forces were still conspiring to undermine the movement. They were no longer fighting for fossil fuels. No, they were fighting for the one thing that could still give them power: control over data. Max and Elon knew it wasn't just about the technology anymore. It was about the data. The energy grid Max had built wasn't only powering homes, factories, and cities. It was also collecting massive amounts of real-time data on every aspect of energy usage. The information that flowed through the system was a goldmine, more valuable than oil, more powerful than any resource the world had ever known. The big corporations understood this better than anyone. Data could predict energy demands, track consumer behavior, and, most importantly, allow companies to create targeted economic policies, surveillance systems, and even influence global markets. And they were willing to do anything to get it. Max had anticipated this. He'd made sure that data privacy and security were baked into the core of his technology. His system was decentralized, meaning that no single entity or corporation could seize control of the data. But the fight for control of energy data had escalated into a global struggle, one that even Max and Elon had underestimated. The first sign of trouble came in the form of cyber attacks. It started with small disruptions, a glitch here, a delay there. But within weeks, it escalated into full-scale digital warfare. The global energy grid, now interconnected and reliant on Max's technology, was under constant assault. "Max," Elon said one evening, his voice strained, "we need to meet. There's something going on, and it's bigger than we thought." Max's eyes were determined. "Then we make them. The truth is stronger than any network they can create. We'll fight them with transparency. We'll broadcast the attacks in real time, show the world how they're trying to steal control. If we do this, we'll force their hand. No one can hide from the truth once it's out there." The plan was risky. To expose the cyber attacks meant opening up Max's systems to the world, exposing vulnerabilities that could make it even easier for the attackers to strike again. But Max had made a decision. If the world was going to trust his technology, they needed to see the battle for themselves. They needed to understand the lengths that some would go to in order to prevent true progress. Elon agreed to the plan. They'd go public, broadcasting the attacks as they happened. The broadcast would not only show the attempted hijacking of the energy grids, but it would also allow global citizens to participate in the fight. It would be a demonstration of transparency, collective action, and resilience. On the day of the broadcast, the entire world tuned in. Max stood at the forefront, his young face resolute. Beside him, Elon was calm but visibly tense. The global livestream began, and what viewers saw was shocking. The attempted hijacking of Max's energy system was laid bare. Hackers were attempting to gain control of power grids across the world, rerouting energy and forcing cities into darkness. Max narrated the events as they unfolded, explaining the methods used by the attackers and who was likely behind them. The hackers were targeting the core of the energy system's data flows, but Max and his team were tracking their every move. It was a battle in real time. The screens showed an intense digital warfare as Max's engineers fought to fend off the attackers. They used firewalls, encryption protocols, and AI-driven countermeasures to thwart each attempted breach. The struggle was tense, but Max's confidence never wavered. "These are the people who want to keep the world reliant on fossil fuels," Max said to the audience, his voice steady. They want to control everything. Your energy, your data, your future. They think that by controlling power, they control us. But they're wrong. The world watched as the final wave of attacks was neutralized. Max's system held strong. But the message had been sent. Those who wanted to undermine the revolution had been exposed, and they would no longer remain hidden in the shadows. In the days that followed, global outrage erupted. Governments and citizens alike began to demand accountability. The companies responsible for the cyber attacks were identified, and the public outcry was immense. The transparency Max had called for had worked. The truth had come to light, and it had emboldened millions to stand up against the forces that sought to pull the world back into the past. International regulatory bodies began investigating the companies and individuals behind the attacks. Laws were passed that mandated transparency and data privacy in the energy sector. The power that had once been held by a few corporations was now being distributed across the world, and the public was watching, holding the powerful accountable. For Max and Elon, this was another victory. But it wasn't over. They knew that the fight for the future was ongoing. The enemies they had exposed were still out there, lurking in the shadows, ready to strike again. But they also knew that they were no longer fighting alone. As the sun set over a world forever changed, Max and Elon stood together, looking out over the horizon. The energy revolution had won its most crucial battle, but there was still much to be done. "We've come this far," Elon said, his voice thoughtful. "But I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Max nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "The world will keep changing. It has to." And with that, the battle for the future of the planet raged on. But Max knew that with each passing day, they were one step closer to a world where energy was no longer a commodity, but a right for all. The aftermath of the cyber battle had left the world in a heightened state of awareness. Citizens, governments, and corporations alike had been forced to reckon with the depths of corruption and manipulation in the energy sector. But there was a new sense of urgency, a belief that change wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. Max, now a global figure, had become something of a legend. At just 6 years old, his understanding of energy systems, technology, and politics was unparalleled. He had once been underestimated, written off as a mere child prodigy with lofty ideas. But now, he was seen as the beacon of hope for a brighter, cleaner, and more transparent world. Elon, as his mentor and partner, stood by him every step of the way. He'd always known Max was special, but seeing him face adversity with such clarity, maturity, and resilience had been nothing short of extraordinary. In the months following the battle, Max's technology continued to evolve. The decentralized energy grid had proven itself not only capable of handling the world's energy needs, but also robust enough to fend off cyber attacks. Yet, Max and his team weren't content to rest on their laurels. "We can make this system even better," Max told Elon one afternoon as they walked through the sprawling facility that housed their new research lab in Silicon Valley. The building was a symbol of their progress. Sleek, futuristic, and filled with people from all walks of life, collaborating to push the boundaries of innovation. Elon nodded. "How do you think we can improve it?" Max paused, glancing around at the team working tirelessly on new projects. "We need to think beyond just energy. We need to create an ecosystem where everything, every device, every service, can be connected in a way that makes the whole system smarter, more efficient, and self-sustaining." Elon smiled. "Ah, you're talking about the next step. The true integration of the Internet of Things into the energy system." Max grinned. "Exactly. If we could design a system where energy production, consumption, and storage are all interconnected with the Internet, we'd have a dynamic, self-regulating system that adapts to changing needs in real time. Imagine a world where homes, vehicles, and entire industries automatically adjust to the most efficient energy sources available based on real-time data and predictive algorithms." Elon's eyes lit up. "Now that's a big leap. We need a whole new level of AI to handle that. Something that can not only manage energy flows, but also anticipate demand in ways we haven't seen before." Max's face brightened. "That's why we've got to build it. A system that doesn't just respond to energy demand, but predicts it, that can optimize everything in real time." Max and his team began working on this next phase of innovation, codenamed Project Nexus. The goal was to create an integrated system that would leverage advanced artificial intelligence, machine learning, and real-time data analytics to create an intelligent, self-regulating energy ecosystem. The implications were massive. Instead of static energy grids that relied on human intervention, this new system would be fluid, adaptive, and capable of evolving. It would use vast networks of sensors, real-time data, and predictive algorithms to ensure that energy production and consumption were always perfectly balanced. The team began to experiment with a new kind of smart grid that could incorporate not only solar, wind, and hydroelectric energy, but also small-scale personal energy producers, individuals and businesses that could sell back excess energy. This would create a system where every home and business could act as a node in a vast, self-sustaining network. To make this possible, they needed to push the boundaries of AI, machine learning, and quantum computing. Max was leading the way, designing algorithms that could analyze massive amounts of data from thousands of different sources and predict energy consumption patterns across the globe. As Project Nexus took shape, the world took notice. The concept of a self-regulating energy ecosystem was a game-changer, and governments, tech giants, and investors scrambled to get involved. Elon was bombarded with meetings, pitches, and proposals, but he remained focused on the core mission: to build a world where energy was abundant, accessible, and free for everyone. "We're not just making money here, Max," Elon said one evening, his voice grave. "We're changing the world, for good. This is going to create opportunities in every part of the economy. This is more than energy, it's about empowering people." Max nodded, his young face serious. "The world has been divided for too long. We need to make sure that everyone has access to this new energy. It's not just about saving the environment, it's about giving everyone a chance to thrive." In parallel, the world's media was abuzz with the next phase of the energy revolution. Interviews with Max and Elon were broadcasted globally. Young Max, despite his age, was becoming a household name. People marveled at his intelligence, his maturity, and his ability to communicate complex ideas in simple, accessible ways. But with this fame came new challenges. The political resistance was far from over. While some governments had wholeheartedly embraced the changes, others were more hesitant. Powerful lobbies representing oil, gas, and coal were rallying behind politicians to slow the transition. They were afraid of losing their influence, their profits, and their control over the world's economy. A new wave of misinformation spread across media channels. Articles and reports attempted to discredit Max's technology, questioning its viability and claiming it was a passing trend. They argued that such radical change was dangerous, and that the world was simply not ready to relinquish control over energy to a decentralized, automated system. Max was unfazed. He knew the truth. The world was already changing, and the technology was too powerful, too transformative to be ignored. It was during one of these political battles that Max and Elon found themselves at a global summit, facing off with some of the most influential figures in energy and politics. The summit was being held in Geneva, and world leaders, business tycoons, and environmental activists were all gathered to discuss the future of energy. It was here that Max would present Project Nexus to the world. The room was packed, and the atmosphere was tense. Max and Elon stood before a panel of global leaders, ready to make their case. "Ladies and gentlemen," Max began, his voice clear and confident, "what we are proposing today is not just a new way to generate energy. This is a new way to think about energy, about the future. This is about decentralization, innovation, and empowerment. It's about using the intelligence of the planet itself to create a world where no one is left behind." Max paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The world has spent too long relying on a centralized, outdated system that only benefits the few. We've already proven that a decentralized energy system can work. Now, with Project Nexus, we can take it further. We can create an energy network that adapts to the needs of every individual, every business, and every community. The audience was quiet, listening intently. Max had their attention. "I ask you," he continued, "will you be part of this new world? Will you stand with us and empower the people of this planet, or will you cling to the old ways of control and greed?" The room erupted into applause. The presentation marked a turning point. Within weeks, Project Nexus began gaining traction across the world. Governments, tech companies, and entrepreneurs began investing in the project, eager to be part of the next phase of the global revolution. The old energy giants, once so dominant, were now scrambling to catch up. Max had done it. Once again, he had changed the world. But this time, Max knew something even greater was on the horizon. He wasn't just building an energy system. He was creating a new way of living. A world where people weren't just consumers of energy, but active participants in shaping their futures. It was the dawn of a new era, an era where innovation, transparency, and equality could finally triumph. And Max was ready for whatever came next. What does the future hold for Project Nexus? Will we see a world where every home and business is a node in a self-sustaining energy network? Join the conversation and share your thoughts below. The world was on the verge of something unprecedented. With Project Nexus gaining global momentum, people from every corner of the earth were preparing for the most revolutionary shift in history. Energy, once the domain of the powerful and wealthy, was becoming a universal right. Max and Elon had brought humanity to the cusp of a new age, where technology would serve the people, not the elite. But even as the world embraced this new future, Max knew there was one final challenge they had to overcome. It was the last battle, the final hurdle that would determine whether humanity would truly be free from the grip of the old energy monopolies, or if the new system would crumble under the weight of unseen forces. Just when it seemed like everything was falling into place, a new, mysterious threat emerged. A series of high-profile sabotage attempts began to target the infrastructure of Project Nexus. Entire regions experienced temporary shutdowns. Critical data hubs were wiped clean. Solar farms were mysteriously offline, and wind turbine fields were sabotaged. It was clear someone, or some organization, was fighting back. "Max," Elon said, his tone grim as he stood beside him in the operations room, watching as the data flashed red across the screens. "Someone doesn't want this to succeed, and they're going to great lengths to make sure it doesn't." Max frowned, his young face lined with determination. "This isn't just random interference. These attacks are too coordinated. It's bigger than just a few rogue hackers. This is the last push from the old guard, trying to stop the inevitable." Max had already anticipated that the corporate giants who had once controlled the world's energy would do everything in their power to maintain their monopoly. But this wasn't just about money or control. This was about their very existence. If Project Nexus succeeded, it would not only disrupt their business models, it would render them obsolete. "They can't stop it," Max said, his voice unwavering. "We've already built something too powerful, but we need to figure out how to find them before they do any more damage." Elon nodded. "How do we even begin to track down a group that's operating in the shadows?" Max thought for a moment. "It's not just about tracking them down. It's about cutting off their access to the system. If we lock them out of Project Nexus permanently, they won't be able to do anything. And we need to send a message. This is the final stand, Elon. If they want to fight, we'll give them one." Max and his team launched into overdrive. They employed every available resource to track the source of the sabotage. They deployed artificial intelligence algorithms to comb through terabytes of data for any signs of patterns, any hints of where the attacks were originating. The investigation quickly led them to a shocking conclusion. The attacks were being coordinated from multiple points across the globe, highly sophisticated servers hidden in countries with lax cybersecurity laws. But there was more. It wasn't just the corporate lobbies and fossil fuel companies that were behind this. Max uncovered something even more disturbing. Hidden within the global infrastructure of Project Nexus, there was a network of rogue states and black market interests, all trying to bring down the system. The true scope of the conspiracy was staggering. The goal wasn't just sabotage. It was to seize control of the technology that Max had created. If they could destabilize the system, they could claim it as their own and sell it back to the highest bidder, reversing the revolution and reasserting their dominance over global energy. It was the perfect plan to take back power, and it was now more dangerous than ever. Max's team worked tirelessly around the clock. With each passing hour, the pressure mounted. If they didn't act fast, the old guard could launch an all-out attack on the system, triggering widespread chaos in the global energy market. It was a race against time. But there was one final step in Max's strategy, the global shutdown protocol. It was a bold move, But the only way to fight back against the attackers was to temporarily take Project Nexus offline, forcing a reset of the entire system. By doing this, they could lock out the attackers and force them into the open. But this would be a risky move. It could cause temporary blackouts around the world and create panic. The people might turn against Max, believing that the system had failed them at the worst possible moment. This could set us back a year, Elon warned. People are just starting to trust the system. If we do this, it could shake their faith. Max nodded. But if we don't, we could lose everything we've worked for. We can't let them win. We need to take the fight to them now. Max and his team activated the global shutdown protocol, and within minutes, the energy grid began to power down in select regions. The world held its breath as the systems rebooted. The lights flickered in cities across the globe, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the entire world was plunging into darkness. But then, the system came back online. And with it, a shocking revelation. The attacks had come from inside the system itself. Max's team had tracked the source of the cyber intrusion to a deep-level vulnerability in the very code they had built. The attackers had infiltrated the infrastructure in ways Max had never imagined. But thanks to the reset, they had purged the rogue code, eliminating the threat completely. The world watched in awe as the data came flooding in. Max had done it. He had successfully neutralized the threat, and in doing so, had exposed the attackers for the entire world to see. There, in real time, were the names, the corporate entities, and the rogue states behind the sabotage attempts. The culprits were now fully exposed. They could no longer hide in the shadows. Max and Elon had won the final battle. The days following the reset were filled with triumph and reflection. Global leaders congratulated Max and Elon for their resilience and determination. The attackers, those who had tried to destroy the future of energy, were held accountable. Major reforms were enacted to ensure that the world's energy systems would never again fall prey to the greed and manipulation of the few. Max's technology, now fully integrated and secure, began to usher in a new era of sustainable energy. Project Nexus wasn't just a technological achievement. It was a symbol of a new world order, one where power was truly in the hands of the people. The world had come full circle. From the brink of collapse to the dawn of an age of innovation, Max and Elon had done the impossible. They had taken down the most entrenched systems of power, rebuilt the world's energy infrastructure, and created a system that would serve everyone, not just the few. As Max stood at the edge of a balcony in their new global headquarters, overlooking a world now fueled by clean, limitless energy, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. He was still just a child, but he had seen and done things that would shape the future of humanity for generations to come. Elon joined him, standing quietly at his side. "You've changed the world, Max," he said, his voice tinged with awe. Max didn't respond right away. He gazed out at the horizon, the vast potential of the future stretching before him. "It wasn't just me, Elon. It was everyone. All the people who believed in this future. The real change is still coming, though." Elon smiled, his eyes reflecting the same hope that Max had always had. "I think you're right. This is just the beginning." And so, the story of Max and Elon came to an end, not with a victory that closed the book on the battle, but with a beginning. A beginning of a new world where technology and innovation would be used not just to profit, but to uplift and empower every person on Earth. What do you think the future holds for energy and innovation? Do you think we'll see more young geniuses like Max change the world? Let us know your thoughts below.